Chapter 1613, So It's a Misunderstanding. A great saint personally arrived, bringing with him the saintly medicine that the Long tribe urgently needed as a bridal gift. How could the Long tribe afford to refuse this offer of marriage? Moreover, it was actually not a loss to the Long tribe. Zhong was a newly advanced saint, and his aptitude was amazing. In the future, it was very possible that he would be able to become a great saint or even a saint king, and was there any better prospective husband for a woman than this? Long Yushan did not wish to speak much on this matter, and asked Long Xiangyue, "That's right, why have you suddenly returned?" Long Xiangyue's pretty face involuntarily blushed. Bringing her lover back with her to seek marriage from her auntie? This was a little chaotic, and she could not bring herself to say the words. Yet Ling Han clasped his hands in greeting and said, "Senior Long, I am Ling Han, and I wish to ask for a dragon horn from Senior." Long Yushan's pretty face abruptly darkened. "This is only our first meeting, and you are already having designs on me?" Even a saint like Zhong did not satisfy her, what more a Ling Han who was only in the Eternal River tier. "Senior, take a look at this first." Ling Han brought out a cup of reincarnation tea, and handed it over to Long Yushan. Long Yushan's first reaction was to overturn this cup, yet her hand had just lifted when she suddenly paused. The aroma of the tea was refreshing to both heart and spirit, making her feel like her spirit had been steadied, as if she was fitting in with the great Tao, and filled her with an amazing enlightenment. Her heart involuntarily throbbed strongly. Was this saintly medicine? After a momentary pause, she automatically took the teacup, and finished the tea in a single gulp. Suddenly, there were patterns of great Tao appearing all over her body, and her raven locks fluttered. A divine multicolored light shone from her, making her look extremely beautiful and alluring. She immediately sat down in a cross-legged position, and only after a whole day did she finally reopen her eyes. She couldn't help but look pleasantly surprised. Her cultivation level had actually advanced a short distance forwards. It should be known that when one had reached a height like she had, every further step forwards was extremely difficult, and the time needed would be numbered in millions of years. Yet now, with the help from a single cup of tea, she had taken another step forwards. Just how amazing was that? If she could obtain more tea leaves, and drink this kind of tea every day, what would happen then? She couldn't help but look towards Ling Han, seeing him in a new light. 10 tea leaves in exchange for a single dragon horn, deal? Ling Han quoted a price. Long Yushan's pretty face darkened again. You, a mere Eternal River tier, actually treated yourself like some important figure, and planned to use a mere 10 tea leaves to trade for the rest of her life? Furthermore, this was not a question of the volume of the bridal gift. She already had a betrothal with Zhong, so how could she go back on her word? Even if she was willing to, having screwed a saint king over, what kind of fate would befall the Long tribe? Humph, if it was not because of Xiangyue, I would definitely kill you. With a flutter of her sleeve, she commanded, "Leave." Ling Han was baffled. "If you are not happy with the price, we can just negotiate, right? Why do you have to give me this attitude? Where have I offended you?" He was about to say something more, yet Long Xiangyue kept signaling him with her eyes, and he closed his mouth. "Let's go." Long Xiangyue pulled Ling Han with her and left. "Auntie is presently angry." "Don't be anxious, I will work slowly on Auntie, and will definitely persuade her to change her mind." Ling Han scratched his head, and said, "That's right, your grand elder should also have dragon horns. Why don't I just trade with him then?" Long Xiangyue got such a shock that she delicately shuddered. The grand elder of the Long tribe was a male. Just what kind of person are you? Not only do you want to have an aunt and niece, you do not even want to spare men? This was practically a beast. Ling Han was even more dumbfounded, and asked, "Is there some kind of misunderstanding here? I only want a single dragon horn. I need it for something, and mean nothing else by it." "Ah." Long Xiangyue gasped. You really have no other intention besides that? What have you all misunderstood? Ling Han asked. Long Xiangyue breathed a sigh of relief internally, yet was also slightly disappointed. Going by that logic, when Ling Han had asked her for a dragon horn previously, it was not because he liked her. Suddenly, her emotions took a downturn, and she ignored Ling Han. She walked ahead on her own. Hey, hey, hey. Ling Han hurriedly caught up to her. After he repeatedly asked her, Long Xiangyue finally informed him about the significance of the dragon horns to the dragon tribe. Ling Han's expression involuntarily became strange. No wonder this girl had previously been so fierce. Hold on, but her attitude had obviously changed later on, and she even brought him to see her auntie. You, don't misunderstand, I, too, only want to help you borrow a dragon horn from auntie. I have absolutely no other intention. Long Xiangyue hurriedly explained. Since Ling Han had previously had completely no idea about the significance of the dragon horn, it made her seem as if she had weird tastes, to actually be so shameless to sell off herself together with her auntie to him. Ling Han nodded. It was better not to deliberate too deeply on this topic. Long Xiangyue first brought Ling Han to settle down first, and she then went off to clarify things with Long Yushan. Ling Han really and purely only wanted to borrow a single dragon horn, and had no other intention. Ling Han rested in his room. He decided to see if Long Xiangyue would be able to succeed first. If she did not, then even if he had to resort to trickery and deceit, he would have to get himself a dragon horn, and then head to the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire to trade for a celestial technique. Was the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire someone who had experienced the great turmoil of the celestial realm? He should not be. The era of the great turmoil of the celestial realm had been much too long ago, and even if a celestial king entered into the ancient realm, his lifespan would also be severed, and he might not live that much longer than a Genesis tier. Forget it. He'd ask him when he saw him. He was sure that he could find out more secrets from the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Pung, pung, pung. Not too long after, a knock rang out from the courtyard doors. Ling Han controlled his origin power to open the doors from afar, and saw that there was a man and woman standing at the doorway, Yang Zige and Jing Yi. My young master seeks your presence. Jing Yi stated coldly. Ling Han's first reaction was that he couldn't be bothered. If he wanted to meet him, didn't he know the way here? What great airs he was putting on. However, he thought the matter over, and changed his mind. He had to clarify the relation between the Open Clouds Forbidden Land and the Open Clouds King. Thus, he nodded, and answered, lead the way. Jing Yi and Yang Zige both showed expressions of indifference. As they thought if a saint summoned him, did Ling Han dare to refuse? The two of them led the way, and brought Ling Han to another courtyard, which was actually very near. After Ling Han had entered, they closed the doors behind him, and stood guard loyally outside. Zhong Badu was presently sitting in a pavilion in the courtyard and sipping tea, appearing to be very relaxed. If you don't want to die, scram immediately, and never return. Zhong Badu had his back facing Ling Han, and directly issued a command. In his eyes, when a saint spoke, it was natural that all common people could only obey strictly. Ling Han couldn't help but smile, and asked, does your Open Clouds Forbidden Land have an Open Clouds King? Insolence, how dare you directly speak the name of our Grand Elder? Zhong Badu stood up in rage, his finger pointing at Ling Han, and his expression baleful. As expected. Ling Han nodded. He had not thought that he would meet a descendant of the Open Clouds King at this time and in this kind of situation. He smiled faintly, and said, if I have the chance, I will pay a visit to the Open Clouds Forbidden Land. Who do you think you are? Zhong Badu couldn't help but smirk coldly. Did he really think that he was some kind of important figure? saying something like paying a visit if he had the chance. He was merely an ant of the eternal river tier. Since you are unwilling to listen to wise advice, you are courting death. He humphed coldly, and tapped out a finger at Ling Han. Xiao, a shadowy point of light surged out, and sank towards Ling Han's forehead. Chapter 1614, Exchange Condition. Ling Han similarly flicked a finger, and a flash of sword light surged out. Zhong Badu's attack was suddenly erased. Zhong Badu couldn't help but look surprised. Though he had only struck casually, the power of a saint was the strongest in this world. How could it be that he wouldn't be able to kill a mere eternal river tier? Yet the truth was as bizarre as that. Ling Han actually dissipated a strike from him. How is this possible? Interesting. Zhong Badu stated coldly. Though he was extremely shocked, a saint naturally had the bearing of a saint, and he did not panic in the slightest. It would not be polite just to receive and not give, so you should take a strike from me as well. Ling Han struck out at Zhong Badu, using his fingers like he would a sword. Zhong Badu swiped out his palm in front of him to block this strike, and pang, the two of them had again exchanged blows. They did not make another move, and merely looked at each other. Through this exchange, Zhong Badu could confirm that Ling Han had battle prowess on the level of a saint. This caused him great confusion because no matter how freakish you were, without reaching the level of mastery over the regulations, however strong your power was, it would only be empty. Yet possessing battle prowess of a saint, and having power that was a match for his were completely two different matters. Zhong Badu had complete confidence that Ling Han could not possibly be a match for him, but he was definitely not an opponent that he could suppress in a few moves either. If they really battled all out, the whole Long tribe might possibly be completely destroyed. Though he was arrogant, he was not so conceited that he would dare be so rash in the residence of a medium saint. Thus, he did not make another move. Truly interesting. He switched to another line. I am extremely curious. You are clearly only in the eternal river tier, yet how could you possess such strong power? Ling Han answered, Where is the open clouds forbidden land? I will come pay a visit when I have the time. Have you consumed some natural treasures? Zhong Badu asked further. I don't like how you look, so I plan to ruin this betrothal for you, Ling Han retorted. Neither of them were answering each other's questions. This was completely meaningless. Zhong Badu paused darkly, and said, There must be an extremely big secret that you're concealing. I will find out all of it. Ling Han broke into a grin. If you're not scared of death, bring it on. Just see how I will kill you. Ha, ha ha ha. Zhong Badu laughed loudly. I have never seen any eternal river tier like you. You truly are qualified to be arrogant. For the sake of this place being the Long tribe, I will allow you to continue with your arrogance for a while longer. You too, you too. Ling Han turned and left. Since he already knew that this open clouds forbidden land was the lair of the open clouds king, he knew where he should go to find the open clouds king in future. Zhong Badu looked at Ling Han's back, his eyes narrowing slightly, and leaking out killing intent. Yet, he ultimately did not make a move. Just as he had said, this place was the Long tribe. He was not sure that he could apprehend Ling Han without causing damage to the Long tribe. Ling Han walked out the doors, and both Jing Yi and Yang Zige showed expressions of pride. They did not know what had happened inside the courtyard, but according to their assumption, since the young master had made a move, Ling Han naturally could only obey. Scram further away, and don't come back and be an irksome presence. Yang Zige moped. He had suffered a punch from Ling Han, so he naturally hated Ling Han very much. Pang! Ling Han casually threw out a punch, which landed on Yang Zige's face. He had put so much force in the strike that the latter was sent flying. Pang! The main doors were crashed open by the impact, and Yang Zige collapsed heavily onto the ground. He rolled around a good few times on the ground, and only stopped when he collided into a stone pillar. He was angered, embarrassed, and shocked. Ling Han actually still dared to attack him? And he again embarrassed himself in front of the young master. This caused his face to be burning red, and he wanted nothing more than to rush up and strangle Ling Han to death. "You are dead," he shouted with his head held high as he got to his feet. To actually make a move on him right in front of his young master, didn't one have to see who the master was before beating his dog? Why was there no sign of movement? Yang Zige couldn't help but turn around to look at Zhong Badu. His impression of Zhong Badu was that he was a man who was a strong defender of his own people, no matter whose fault it was. So all the while, it was only he who would be bullying others, and he would definitely not allow others to behave atrociously towards him. Yet now he was actually only glaring at Ling Han. What was going on here? This was a bit awkward. Ling Han smiled slightly, turned around, and walked off. He stretched out a hand and waved before leaving boldly. "Young master, he's too arrogant, we can't." "Pa!" Yang Zige hurriedly complained to Zhong Badu, yet did not expect that Zhong Badu would slap him heavily when he had not even finished speaking. He was completely stunned by this action. "Scram!" Zhong Badu spat out. He was really an idiot. Could it be that he did not know how to read expressions? Jing Yi meanwhile was shocked. She had never seen Zhong Badu lose his composure to this extent. Just what abilities did that young man have to actually push Zhong Badu to actually vent his anger on his own subordinates? Ling Han returned to his own courtyard, and began thinking, supporting his head with a hand. Since Zhong Badu really was a descendant of the Open Clouds king, then no matter what, he was determined to ruin this betrothal contract. The question here was, how was he to do that? The Grand Elder of the Long Tribe had not gone to Wood Figure Planet, so it was very possible that he had not heard of his name. In that case, his brand name would not be of much use here, and judging from Zhong Badu's behavior, it seemed like the Open Clouds' forbidden land was very remote, and similarly did not know who he was, which led to the fact that his mighty reputation was actually completely useless here. I'll just see how things are progressing on Long Xiangyue's side first. Ling Han decided to first sit and wait. After all he could depend on was his glorious military successes as an intimidation factor, and his true abilities were only limited to small saint level. If it was not intimidating enough, then just a medium saint would be enough to deal with him. Not more than 2 days had passed, and Long Yushan suddenly came over. "Did you really kill 2 Saint Kings?" she asked in disbelief. Ling Han smilingly replied, "That's right. You can ask around anywhere you like, and there is nothing exaggerated about it." Long Yushan stared at Ling Han, yet could not believe it however hard she tried to. No matter how she looked, he was only an eternal river tear, but how could Long Xiangyue possibly deceive her on this matter? She suddenly made a move, and grabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han countered casually, and the killing formations inside his body activated, surging out with small saint-level battle prowess. Furthermore, it was the strength of the top level, and he easily blocked this strike from Long Yushan. He did not press his attack, because Long Yushan was only testing his power. Long Yushan was involuntarily stunned. Previously, Ling Han had definitely not used any kind of precious tool, yet the burst of power from him was enough to match her. From this aspect, if he still had any trump card and used it, perhaps killing a Saint King was really not just a fantastical story. She paused, and said, "Do something for me, and I will give you a dragon horn." Ling Han smiled slightly, and answered, "Tell me, what is it you want me to do?" "I want you to think of a way to cancel the betrothal that I have with the Zhong clan," Long Yushan said. This was really interesting. He was intending to ruin this betrothal in the first place, but he had not thought that Long Yushan would actually use this as her condition. This was equivalent to giving him the dragon horn for free. He said, Marrying or not, the right to choose is yours. Wouldn't it be fine if you just directly refused? No. Long Yushan shook her head. The Zhong clan has a saint king. If we directly refuse the betrothal, it would definitely anger this saint king. The Long tribe would be drowned in calamity. Thus, you have to be the one to do this task. She was meaning to have him become a fool here. Chapter 16:15, Proposing Marriage. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Since you know that I have the means to overwhelm a saint king, why do you not fear that I would directly make a move to snatch it from you? In any case, I only want the horn of a true dragon, so what need is there for me to go to so much trouble? If you had been that kind of person, wouldn't have you long since made your move?" Long Yushan countered. "That may not be." Ling Han shook his head. To release the battle prowess of a saint king, there is a need to pay a very heavy price. Do you think that this is something that a single horn from a true dragon can compensate for? Long Yushan gritted her teeth, and asked, "Then what other condition do you want?" Ling Han laughed mischievously, and deliberately revealed an evil look. Just as Long Yushan was about to fly into a rage, he shrugged, and said, "Fine, I agree. In any case, I don't like that guy, either." Long Yushan was startled. Was he playing around with her? But since Ling Han had agreed, that was naturally best. She nodded, and said, "You must immediately make a marriage proposal to the clan, and I will add fuel to the fire so that you and Zhong Badu can use a battle to decide the matter. At that time, you can wound him, and I will be able to refuse your marriage proposal with the reason of not wanting to offend the Zhong clan. At the same time, I will not need to obey the Zhong clan either. Your idea is quite good." Ling Han scratched his head. At any other time, offending a forbidden land to trade for a true dragon horn was definitely an extremely poor deal, but who asked Zhong Badu to be the descendant of the Open Clouds King? He despised the Open Clouds King very much in the first place, and Zhong Badu's attitude also made him very displeased. Thus, he naturally would not mind moving to teach a lesson to this descendant of the Open Clouds King first. Deal. He nodded. Here. Long Yushan gripped a dragon horn on her head, and exerted effort. Pa! She snapped off a dragon horn. There was bright ruby-red blood seeping from the wound, but it was incredibly thick, and did not drip on the ground. She tossed the dragon horn over to Ling Han. Ling Han caught it, and couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He asked, "Aren't you afraid that I will run off now that I have gotten what I wanted? I trust you." After Long Yushan said this, she turned and left. Ling Han stretched lazily. "Since that's the case, I will put on a good performance." He exited the courtyard, and had someone pass on the message with his request to meet with the patriarch of the Long tribe. The Long tribe patriarch was not the ancestor of the Long tribe. That medium saint was busy cultivating all day round, so how could he possibly have the time to take charge of the trifle matters of the clan? Thus, the Long tribe patriarch was an elite in the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. He thought that he could not possibly break through to the Genesis tier, so he set his mind on sitting in this position, and no longer dreamed extravagantly of becoming a saint himself. Very quickly, a servant brought the message that the Long tribe patriarch would see him. "Ho ho, friend Ling is really young and promising. It is said that you have cultivated for less than 1,000 years, and already possess such strength. This is really something that is impressive and would make others envious." The Long tribe patriarch met with Ling Han in the Great Hall. He was a man that looked to be in his 50s. He looked very formidable and aggressive, and it was as if an ancient fierce beast was hidden inside his body. His battle prowess definitely made him a big shot among Eternal River tiers. Ling Han grinned, and said, "You've overpraised me. Lord Patriarch, I will not waste my breath either, and directly state the purpose of my visit. Please." The Long tribe patriarch was still very polite. Though he did not think that Ling Han could be stronger than himself, both of them were in the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, so he still had to give Ling Han some face. Most importantly, Ling Han was too young. Since he had reached the consummate level of the Eternal River tier at such a young age, then breaking through to the Saint tier was not an impossible matter either. He naturally had to give some face to a future saint. Ling Han said, "I have come especially to bring a bridal gift." Oh! Realization dawned on the Long Tribe Patriarch, and he was all smiles. He had long guessed this was the case. Xiangyue had brought him back with her, so could the significance be any clearer than that? Their Long Tribe was also the strongest force in this whole galaxy, and there was no need for them to use marriage to improve and strengthen their position. Thus, as long as Xiangyue wanted to, he naturally would be pleased to bring a romance to a happy ending. Moreover, the possibility of Ling Han becoming a saint in future was very high. The Long Tribe having such a son-in-law was naturally not deprecating to Long Xiangyue at all. "Sit down first, and let us discuss slowly." He beckoned him over, and his attitude towards Ling Han inevitably became considerably warmer. Ling Han was surprised, and then immediately realized that this Lord Patriarch must have misunderstood. He coughed, and said, "Lord Patriarch, my marriage proposal is not for Miss Long Xiangyue." The Long Tribe Patriarch was startled. The one he had his eye on was not Long Xiangyue? Then that was strange. Aside from Xiangyue, what other clansman of the Long Tribe was worthy of being a match for a prodigy like him? "Then, the person you like is Long Yushan, Fairy Long." Ling Han wore a bashful smile. Fuck, he was lying through his teeth here, and would be struck by lightning for his deceit. This time, the Patriarch of the Long Tribe was really surprised. He stared blankly at Ling Han, and did not know what he was supposed to say at this moment. "Lord Patriarch?" Ling Han called out. The Patriarch of the Long Tribe came back to his senses, and answered, "Friend, Lady Yushan has long since been betrothed to another." Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "That's fine. It is just a betrothal, so cancelling it would be all right." At this instant, the Patriarch of the Long Tribe really wanted to deliver a slap straight to Ling Han's face. Cancel? He was saying it like it was so easy. The fiancé is from the open clouds forbidden land, where there is a Saint King overseeing them, and you actually said you want us to cancel it. Are you not afraid of the fiery fury of a Saint King? Ho ho, friend, you should not joke around, the Long Tribe Patriarch said with a forced smile, no longer wanting to converse with Ling Han. The latter was really dumb with his words. "I'm not kidding," Ling Han said smilingly. "Do not speak of this matter again." The Long Tribe Patriarch gave a resolute rejection. Though he was not qualified to decide the marriage of a saint of the clan, it was obviously impossible that he would offend a Saint King for the sake of a preposterous request from an Eternal River tier. No matter how he thought about it, it was impossible. "I am very sincere in my request. Lord Patriarch had best reconsider." Ling Han was very shameless. This task he had taken was clearly a job of a villain that would offend others, so he could only put on the act of a villain to the fullest extent. "Friend, please immediately leave the Long Tribe," the Long Tribe Patriarch exclaimed coldly. This was not just forcing them to do something, but also pushing the Long Tribe into a fire pit. "Sure, just hand Long Yushan over, and I will leave immediately." Ling Han continued to behave shamelessly. "You!" The Long Tribe Patriarch jumped to his feet. "Brat, where do you think this is? How could you be allowed to create trouble without reason like this?" Ling Han laughed loudly. "Lord Patriarch, calm down. Calm down." Scram! The Long Tribe Patriarch could not hold back from making a move. He stretched out a hand to grab at Ling Han, and his palm instantly turned into a crimson dragon's claw. Flames intertwined around his claw, and divine patterns bloomed as dragon's might spread out intimidatingly. Ling Han very casually stretched out a hand. "Pa!" He grabbed the extended claw of the Long Tribe Patriarch. "Lord Patriarch, we can converse politely. There is no need to resort to force." The Long Tribe Patriarch couldn't help but be shocked. His hand had fallen into Ling Han's grip, yet it actually could not move in the slightest. The gap in power between the two of them was definitely not just a small bit. How is this possible? He was in the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and the true bloodline of the dragon tribe ran in his veins. His battle prowess would definitely overwhelm his peers, but he actually could not fight back in the slightest against Ling Han. This was something that he could not accept at all. Chapter 16:16, Deciding Through Battle. Lord Patriarch, have you calmed your emotions a bit? Can we discuss peacefully now? Ling Han asked smilingly. The Long Tribe Patriarch's expression was dark. No wonder you dared to behave so unreasonably, so you are so strong. However, this is the Long Tribe, where there are two saints watching over, so no matter how strong you are, what would you be able to do? Sigh, you are being unreasonable here. Ling Han said. Look, I am making a proper marriage proposal to your clan, yet you are already declaring violence. Is this the way you treat a guest? The Long Tribe Patriarch couldn't help but explode with fury. The crux of the matter here is that your request has overstepped the boundaries. Isn't wanting to break the betrothal contract with a Saint King simply putting the Long Tribe on the fire? He surged with dragon's might, wanting to start an aggressive counterattack. Ling Han only acted as if he had not seen it. His right hand gripped the other's dragon arm as if it was just a child he was holding. In front of Ling Han, the Long Tribe Patriarch was really not much different from a child. No matter how intimidating your dragon's might was, and no matter how much your dragon's blood boiled to increase your battle prowess, so what? The Long Tribe Patriarch struggled with all his might. He was already covered with sweat, yet it was as if Ling Han had fallen asleep. That was how indescribably relaxed he was. This. The Long Tribe Patriarch was astonished. Just how wide was the power gap between the two of them? Gritting his teeth, he suddenly drew out a divine sword from his spatial spirit tool. The blade of the sword was actually forged from a white bone, and there were multiple divine patterns that were already shining brightly on it. This was the backbone of an ancestor of the Long Tribe. Before he had died, he himself had plucked it out, and forged it into a god tool. Saint Tool. Wang, the dragon bone sword was activated. This was the Long Tribe, and the Long Tribe Patriarch had a special boost. Instantly, this allowed this Saint Tool to be activated to the maximum. A crimson true dragon flew out of the sword's blade, pouncing to attack Ling Han. Ling Han's eyes widened slightly. Only now had it become a little more interesting. He stretched out his hand to grab the true dragon, the killing formations inside him activating. Countless formation patterns were densely interwoven with each other, and ultimately became a sword that struck out at that true dragon. A bizarre event occurred. With a sweep of its tail, that true dragon actually sank back into the dragon bone sword. It had been scared into fleeing. The Long Tribe Patriarch was dumbfounded. The dragon bone sword was actually terrified of Ling Han. The tool spirit of this sword was actually a wisp of spirit from that ancestor, as it had been forged from a bone that he had plucked out himself. However, it had long since lost sentience, and was only left with the instinct to protect the Long Tribe. But as long as it had become a tool spirit, it had a basic trait, and that was that it would instinctively protect itself. Only if it was undamaged would it be able to complete its goal of protection. Thus, unless absolutely necessary, this kind of precious tool would definitely not battle to the point of being destroyed. Just exactly how strong were you that you could actually induce fear from a completely activated Saint Tool? Ling Han broke into a smile, and asked, Lord Patriarch, can we now discuss calmly? Discuss, we will discuss. The Long Tribe patriarch only felt his head was buzzing, his thoughts in a complete mess. The discussion between the two of them that followed was naturally absolutely meaningless. The Long Tribe patriarch didn't even know what he was saying. Ling Han did not mind it either. In any case, he was purely here to make trouble. After talking for a while, Ling Han left boldly, and with Long Yushan's adding fuel to the fire, there was a rumor that spread through the grapevine of the Long Tribe. Ling Han robbed Zhong Badu of his prize, and had made a marriage proposal for Long Yushan to the Long Tribe, and the generosity of his bridal gift was astonishing. Not too long after, this news had reached the ears of Zhong Badu. Pa! With a palm strike, he had rendered the stone table in front of him into bits. He suddenly stood, his eyes blazing with killing intent. Previously, he had not killed Ling Han completely because he had not wanted to offend the ancestor of the Long Tribe, but this brat actually wasn't just satisfied with that, and actually dared to entertain ideas about his woman. This was unacceptable. Young master. Jing Yi and Yang Zaij both took a step forwards. Zhong Badu suppressed his fury, crossing his arms behind his back. This was only a small rumor. The Long Tribe would not possibly dare break the betrothal, as that would anger a Saint King who would be able to sustain the fury from a Saint King in this world. That person was only trying to get attention. There was no need to pay the matter any mind. When he left the Long Tribe, he would kill him so that he would know how serious the consequences of angering him were. Yet, the matter was not like how Zhong Badu thought. It was not merely the attention-seeking act from an ugly person. It was said that Long Yushan's attitude was very ambiguous, and there was even news that the ancestor of the Grand Elder was going to be asked to come out of seclusion, and make a new assessment of this betrothal. With this, Zhong Badu could no longer sit calmly. What was going on here? Did you all really dare to break the betrothal with him? It was true that he admired Long Yushan's beauty and strength, but what he prized more was her bloodline of the Dragon Tribe. In a unity with a member of their Zhong clan, it was possible that an incredibly strong descendant could be born in future. This was a matter that the Open Clouds King himself had personally commanded. He had to complete this mission fully. Furthermore, the Open Clouds Forbidden Land had long since publicized this betrothal. If the betrothal was suddenly broken at this time, both himself and the Open Clouds Forbidden Land would be humiliated. It definitely couldn't happen. He immediately went off to seek Long Yushan, yet was refused entrance, which gave him a stronger feeling of foreboding. After a few days, Ling Han issued a challenge to Zhong Badu. If Zhong Badu won, he would leave without another word, but if Zhong Badu lost, then he would have to obediently cancel the betrothal. What an intolerable bully! Zhong Badu's fury could not be restrained. He was the son of a forbidden land. When had he suffered such injustice in his whole life? He did not even consider, and immediately agreed to Ling Han's request. He would battle. Zhong Badu smirked internally. At first, he had planned to kill Ling Han after he left the Long Tribe. Since this brat was actually so determined to seek death himself, then he would naturally have to oblige. The two sides made an agreement to battle in the galaxy 3 days later. 3 days passed very quickly. Both Ling Han and Zhong Badu had arrived in the galaxy. Yang Zaij and Jing Yi were standing behind Zhong Badu, and there was not a single person behind Ling Han. The Long Tribe were not helping either side, and were standing in a more central position, not siding with either party. At first, Long Xiangyue had wanted to cheer Ling Han on, yet Long Yushan had grabbed her and stopped her. Thus, she could only gloomily watch as a spectator in the middle. Ling Han! Zhong Badu roared in fury, his voice sounding out like thunder. There was actually a sliver of dragon's might in his voice as well. It seemed like the Zhong clan had other intentions in wanting to marry Long Yushan. Otherwise, to preserve the purity of their bloodline, forbidden lands would usually seek their partners from among their own clans. Ling Han dug his ear, and blew out a breath. What are you calling out so loud for? I am not deaf. Why do I think that not only are you deaf, you are also blind and an idiot as well? Zhong Badu smirked coldly. If you had eyes, and had a brain, you would know that you should not have made an enemy of me. Even if you are a saint, you would also be turned into ash by our open clouds forbidden land. Pa, pa, pa. Ling Han clapped his hands. Your words sound better than any song. I will give you some encouragement, and have no fear that you would become proud of it. Zhong Badu looked at Ling Han. Where exactly are you from? If he did not have the backing on the level of Saint King, how could he dare to oppose him? If he could manage to cultivate to this kind of level and was still an idiot, he really did not believe that was really possible. Ling Han, a lone cultivator, Ling Han stated calmly. Since that is the case, then you can just die. Zhong Badu had lost all patience. His figure charged out. He was going to crush Ling Han to pieces. Chapter 16-17, Time Dragon Tribe. Boom! Symbols of the great Tao encircled Zhong Badu as he unleashed his might as a saint. A silver river materialized in the air, a whopping 7 million heavenly bodies contained within it. Small saints could at most only unleash 10 million heavenly bodies. If they didn't comprehend the great Tao and advance to the level of medium saint, they definitely wouldn't be able to cultivate over 10 million heavenly bodies. Thus, it was evident that Zhong Badu's cultivation had already reached the late stage of a small saint. He made a pressing motion with his palm, his origin power gathering and forming an even larger palm. Great stars materialized one after another, yet they were like mere pellets before his formidable palm. The power of this palm was utterly terrifying. Ling Han snapped his fingers and activated his killing formations, unleashing a streak of sword light that slashed toward the colossal palm. Compared to Zhong Badu's palm, this streak of sword light was incredibly small. It was merely 3 feet long. Meanwhile, Zhong Badu's colossal palm was larger than even heavenly bodies. Their attacks were on 2 completely different levels. Yet, upon impact, Zhong Badu's colossal palm was instantly sliced into 2 by Ling Han's sword light. Zhong Badu grunted in pain. Raising his right hand, he saw that there was blood dripping down from his palm. Although that colossal palm had only been a projection, it was still inextricably linked to him. Generally speaking, however, he wouldn't be affected even if the palm were shattered. Otherwise, wouldn't unleashing such an attack be the same as engaging in close-quarter combat? However, Ling Han's sword light was far too devastating. Not only did it cut through his origin power palm, but it even cut through to the origin and wounded his body. You're a measly eternal river tier cultivator, yet your attacks are actually this powerful, he exclaimed slowly. There was a look of extreme caution on his face. He had exchanged a few casual strikes with Ling Han before, and thus he was already aware that Ling Han possessed the battle prowess of a saint. However, he certainly hadn't expected Ling Han to be powerful enough to rival him. This was simply unfathomable. Yang Zijie finally understood why Zhong Badu had smacked him across the face. As it turned out, he had been rubbing salt into Zhong Badu's wounds. He exchanged a glance with Jing Yi, and they both saw a hint of worry in each other's eyes. Zhong Badu won't lose to Ling Han, will he? No, he definitely won't. They hurriedly shook their heads. Zhong Badu was the king tier of the younger generation in the open clouds forbidden land. The fact that he had become a saint at only 100,000 years of age was proof enough of his mighty status. His talent was simply heaven-defying. Regardless of how freakish Ling Han was, he was still only at the eternal river tier. So, how could he hope to defeat a saint? Yang Zijie and Jing Yi could only reassure themselves with such thoughts. Before witnessing this battle, could they have fathomed an eternal river tier cultivator rivaling a Genesis tier saint? This being the case, would it still come as a huge surprise if Ling Han genuinely defeated a saint? Ling Han, you've succeeded in capturing my attention. Zhong Badu said with a smile. Ling Han possessed the battle prowess of a saint. Even though he was only at the Eternal River tier, it was clear that he possessed some earth-shattering secrets. Zhong Badu was hell-bent on obtaining them. However, Ling Han wore an expression of pure disgust as he said, "Disgusting freak, I didn't think you were this kind of person." Zhong Badu faltered for a moment before finally realizing the reason behind Ling Han's disgust. He couldn't help but flare up in rage. They were both saints, or at least both possessed the battle prowess of saints, and thus they represented the most powerful beings in the world. Yet, Ling Han was actually slandering him without any hesitation. Where was his demeanor as a saint? Die! Zhong Badu roared, his black hair billowing up into the sky. Pung, pung, pung. His clothes exploded into shreds, leaving only his pants intact. This pair of pants was most likely a treasured armor that possessed an incredible toughness. Divine patterns started to appear on his skin, and these were saint-level patterns that could gather the Tao of heaven and earth and have them encircle his body. He would kill Ling Han, and directly pluck his soul to learn his secrets. Dragon of Eternity, he roared. A giant bronze dragon soared out from his chest. This dragon measured 3,000 meters in length, and its appearance was extremely illusory. It was as if it existed in the past, yet as if it existed in the future at the same time. However, one thing was certain: it definitely didn't exist in the present. Time Dragon Tribe, the members of the Long Tribe all exclaimed in astonishment. There was a look of utter shock on their faces. Dragon Tribe. This was an extremely general and broad concept. According to the legends, the first dragon was nurtured and birthed by heaven. This dragon was called the Origin Dragon. The Origin Dragon bore 9 children, and they were the Golden Dragon, Green Dragon, Black Dragon, Crimson Dragon, and so on. These secondary dragon then copulated with beings of other tribes, and birthed even more diverse descendants. Thus, dragon tribes that possessed different bloodlines naturally possessed different abilities as well. For example, the dragon tribe of Gathered Seas planet was descended from the Crimson Dragon, and they were skilled at manipulating fire. As for the bronze dragons, they were the most mysterious members of the dragon tribes. This was because they wielded the power of time. Fittingly, they were named the Time Dragon Tribe. Time, space, darkness, massacre, and so on. These were all regulations that were extremely difficult to grasp. However, members of the Time Dragon Tribe innately possessed the power of time. Thus, they were naturally viewed as impressively powerful beings, and they were also regarded as the elites of the dragon tribes. Who would have thought that the Zhong clan also possessed the bloodline of a dragon tribe? Gasp! Don't tell me that their reason for marriage is to combine the bloodlines of the 2 dragon tribes so that they can bear descendants who possess both the power of time and the power of flames. The members of the Long tribe all speculated over this. Otherwise, why would the Zhong clan have traveled hundreds of millions of kilometers for a marriage with the Long tribe? The power of time surged through the air as the bronze dragon soared toward Ling Han. Ling Han threw a punch, yet it was unable to cause any damage as it struck the bronze dragon. In fact, it was unable to shift even a single dragon scale. This dragon didn't belong to the present, so how could it be struck by an attack that existed in the present? Ling Han smiled as he unleashed another punch. This time, however, he imbued his punch with the tide of the ages. Pung! This strike finally landed on the bronze dragon's body. However, even though Tide of the Ages was a celestial technique, its power was limited by Ling Han's lowly cultivation level. As such, there was no way for Ling Han to unleash the true might of this celestial technique. The bronze dragon simply faltered for a moment before continuing to charge at Ling Han. Even so, Zhong Badu was still astounded by what he saw. His opponent had actually managed to affect the power of time. This was truly incredible. At the same time, this further heightened his interest and curiosity regarding Ling Han's secrets. He could barely wait to make them his. Ling Han attacked again, activating his killing formations that released a brilliant light. This brilliant light then formed a sword ray that slashed at the bronze dragon. However, it was a shame that the bronze dragon didn't belong to the present. As such, this sword ray would be unable to wound it regardless of how powerful it was. Ha ha ha. Zhong Badu roared with laughter as he commanded the bronze dragon to pounce on Ling Han. Upon being struck by the power of time, one portion of Ling Han's body would enter the future, one portion would remain in the present, and one portion would return to the past. In other words, he could only suffer one fate dismemberment. This was a celestial technique of the open clouds forbidden land, and it was an incredibly powerful technique that was inherited through their bloodline. The bronze dragon was already upon Ling Han, its 4 claws locked onto his shoulders and legs. Shatter! Zhong Badu roared. However, Ling Han remained standing where he was, completely unscathed. Shatter! 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 Zhong Badu roared. He injected a burst of power into the bronze dragon with each roar, raising the overall power of the dragon. Ling Han cocked his head slightly, poking his head out from behind the bronze dragon. There was a smile on his face, and he asked, "Are you tired from all that shouting? If you are, then why don't you take a rest? Don't damage your throat with all that shouting." How is this possible? Zhong Badu was transfixed with shock. That was the bronze dragon, a dragon that possessed the power of time. Upon being attacked by it, one would instantly be dismembered into several pieces. Yet, what in the world was happening right now? He funneled all of his power into the bronze dragon, yet Ling Han remained unscathed and unmoving regardless of how the power of time struck him. Indeed, the power of time wasn't all-powerful. Ling Han's physique had already reached the level of saintly material, so as a fellow small saint, how could Zhong Badu's power of time damage him? Ling Han shuddered slightly as he unleashed a Dao manifestation that measured over 30,000 meters in height. This Dao manifestation grabbed the bronze dragon and, following a loud roar, ripped it from Ling Han's body. It held the dragon as if it were holding a snake. How domineering! Chapter 16:18, A Wisp of Celestial Qi. Ling Han's Dao manifestation towered into the sky, a bronze dragon in its hand. It was like a god of war, a dragon slayer. This was an astounding sight, one that snatched the attention of everyone, and caused them to involuntarily hold their breath. The women of the Long tribe all had stars in their eyes, their expressions dreamy and intoxicated. Ling Han looked at Zhong Badu, and calmly asked, "Got any more attacks?" His voice was calm, yet it carried a hint of killing intent. In any case, he had already made an enemy of the open clouds forbidden land, so he might as well take things even further and directly kill Zhong Badu. Anyhow, he had destroyed their wedding, so would the open clouds forbidden land let him off the hook? Impossible. That being the case, it was only natural for him to kill Zhong Badu first. At any rate, he didn't like this person anyway. Moreover, this wedding would only be considered as completely and thoroughly ruined if he killed Zhong Badu. Zhong Badu's aura of might was instantly shattered by Ling Han's attack. The Time Dragon was one of his trump cards, yet it had actually failed to injure even one hair of Ling Han's. This was a huge blow to his confidence. At this moment, he couldn't help but think, will I actually be defeated? However, he immediately shook his head to rid himself of this thought. This was impossible. And he wouldn't allow it to happen either. He was a saint, and he was more so a supreme prodigy of the open clouds forbidden land. As such, how could he lose to a youth, one who was only at the eternal river tier? 9 Meridian Celestial Sword, he roared. Wisps of celestial light instantly rose from 9 meridians inside his body. He then retrieved and activated a saint tool, which lit up with an array of symbols and unleashed a boundless saintly might. However, this wasn't the most terrifying aspect of his attack. Celestial light continued to gather inside his body, forming a razor-sharp blade on the tip of his sword. After imbuing his saint tool with a wisp of celestial chi, its sharpness was now imposing and overwhelming. To say nothing of Ling Han, a measly eternal river tier cultivator. Even small saints and medium saints wouldn't dare to be struck by this saint tool. If they were struck, the celestial chi contained within the saint tool would instantly obliterate their divine sense. This secret technique was a celestial king tier technique. However, it was a shame that the Open Clouds King had only obtained an incomplete copy of this celestial king tier technique. While breaching the underground palace storage to steal this celestial king tier technique, the Heavenly River King had severed one of his dragon claws, and also obliterated a large portion of the scroll that held the celestial king tier technique. Although the damaged scroll was still relatively precious, enabling those at the Genesis tier to cultivate a wisp of celestial chi and boundlessly raise their battle prowess, it was ultimately not powerful enough to help them open the gates to the celestial realm anymore. Otherwise, the Open Clouds King would have entered the celestial realm long ago. There was simply no way he would be content with remaining in the immortal realm. In any case, would this technique not be powerful enough to deal with a measly eternal river tier cultivator? A look of apprehension spread across Ling Han's face as he glanced at the saint tool. He could detect from this saint tool an aura that was similar to that of his divine demon sword. Celestial level power. However, compared to his divine demon sword, the celestial level power of this saint tool was far too weak. In fact, it was so weak that it was barely detectable. Even so, Ling Han didn't dare to underestimate it. After all, celestial level power was a huge threat to any cultivator of the immortal realm. Die! Zhong Badu bellowed as he charged at Ling Han, sword in hand. In the beginning, he had been content with engaging in long-distance battle. After all, this was the battle style that cultivators were the most familiar with. Now, however, he was doing the exact opposite. He wanted to engage in close-quarter combat with Ling Han. This was because saint tools were the most effective when they directly struck their target. Swoosh! 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 Heavenly bodies quaked and the entire galaxy shuddered as the saint tool swept through the vacuum. The wisp of celestial chi on the tip of the sword was immensely destructive toward the space of the immortal realm, and it viciously tore through the void, forming numerous black holes in its wake. Ling Han shook his right hand, and summoned the divine demon sword. If we're going to compete in terms of saint tools, who's more afraid of whom? Clang, 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 clang. The divine demon sword continued to clash with Zhong Badu's saint tool. Both had a toughness of level 17 godly metal, and thus it was only natural that neither was able to defeat the other. However, the divine demon sword was a celestial tool in its essence, so even though it hadn't fully awakened yet, it was still hundreds of times more powerful than the saint tool that only contained a wisp of celestial chi. After continuously clashing many times, the celestial chi on the saint tool finally started to waver. Like a struggling fish on land, it looked like it was about to die out at any moment. What? Zhong Badu was truly flustered at this moment. The 9-meridian celestial sword was his most powerful technique. In fact, the 9-meridian celestial king had once killed a celestial king in a single strike after unleashing this technique. Now, however, this technique was about to be shattered under Ling Han's relentless attacks? Just how unfathomable was this? I'll kill you first, and I'll send the Open Clouds King to hell to meet up with you later. Ling Han said. He unleashed the 9 heavens flame from his left hand as he continued to brandish the divine demon sword with his right. These flames were also at the celestial king level. Even though he was unable to unleash their full power because he was still extremely weak now, Zhong Badu was also only at the immortal level as well. Who in the world are you? Zhong Badu asked in a quiet voice. By the looks of it, it seemed like there was great animosity between Ling Han and the open clouds forbidden land. You don't need to know. Now, rest in peace. Ling Han activated all of the killing formations in his body, causing his battle prowess to rise explosively. In combination with his divine demon sword and 9 heavens flame, he was already close to invincible among the level of small saints. Damn it! Zhong Badu brandished his sword to parry, yet he was pushed back dozens of kilometers each time he blocked. He was being completely overwhelmed by Ling Han. What terrified him the most was the sword and flames in Ling Han's hands. They were far too petrifying. In fact, he felt like he would face instant death if he came into contact with either of the two. This apprehension undoubtedly hindered his ability to battle at his full potential. He felt a strong urge to distance himself from Ling Han, yet this was easier said than done. After all, it was he who had actively charged over just then. Meanwhile, Ling Han formed a cage with his 9 heavens flame to prevent Zhong Badu from escaping. They would fight to the death inside this flaming cage. Pooh! Zhong Badu spat out a mouthful of blood, an incredulous look on his face. He was no match for Ling Han, even in close-quarter combat. This realization almost drove him crazy. He was a small saint, yet his power was actually inferior to that of a measly Eternal River tier cultivator. This was simply unfathomable, even if his opponent was at the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. 3 strikes, and you'll be on your way to the afterlife. Ling Han said coldly. In your dreams. Zhong Badu said with clenched teeth. He started to combust his source power in a last-ditch attempt to escape. However, would his actions faze Ling Han? Trapped inside the cage formed by the 9 heavens flame, it was simply impossible for him to escape. Have mercy, a melodious yet grave voice suddenly said. This voice had abruptly arrived from Gathered Sea's planet after cutting across vast expanses of space. Dragon's might surged throughout the space, tumultuous as a tsunami. Our respects to Ancestor. The members of the Long tribe all kneeled down on a single knee. Even Long Yushan wore a respectful expression, her hands obediently by her sides. The owner of this voice was none other than the ancient ancestor of the Long tribe, a formidable medium saint. Zhong Badu instantly regained his composure. His saintly battle against Ling Han had been so intense that it had even caught the attention of the secluding ancient ancestor of the Long tribe. Now that he was aware of the situation, could this ancient ancestor allow Ling Han to kill him before his very eyes? Of course he couldn't. Or else the Long tribe would also be dragged into this mess. Choosing inaction while seeing him being killed, what kind of message would that be sending? Ling Han paid no heed to the voice. He had already made his decision, and no one was going to change his mind. Die. Zhong Badu was already starting to relax, yet Ling Han's reaction instantly caused his hair to stand on ends. How are you so stubborn? A medium saint has already spoken, yet you're still not heeding his words? He had no choice but to raise his arms to parry. Unsurprisingly, he spat out another mouthful of blood as he was sent stumbling back by Ling Han's overwhelming power. I said, stop. A loud roar traveled over from Gathered Sea's planet again. This time, however, the dragon's might became tangible, with a crimson true dragon materializing in the air as the voice boomed over. This true dragon then swooped down at Ling Han. Ling Han completely ignored this true dragon as he frenziedly swung his sword at Zhong Badu. He was hellbent on killing this person. Pang! The crimson true dragon crashed into the cage that was formed from the 9 heavens flame, the powerful impact instantly shattering the cage. However, the 9 heavens flame was far too high in quality as well, so it also incinerated the crimson true dragon into nothingness. Zhong Badu seized this opportunity to flee. Third strike. Ling Han's ice-cold voice suddenly said from behind him. Chapter 1619, Leaving. Swoosh. A streak of brilliant sword light slashed through the air, illuminating the entire galaxy. Pooh! The sword slashed down, and Zhong Badu was instantly sliced in two. Saintly blood sprayed into the surroundings and blotted out the stars. No! Zhong Badu roared in terror. Who wasn't afraid of death? Moreover, he was a supreme prodigy who had a limitless future before him. Thus, he had never imagined that death would befall him so soon. His left and right hand both grabbed onto a half of his body, and tried to mend them back together. Wang, wang, wang. The power of time pulsated inside his body, attempting to reverse the passage of time and return him to some point in the past, thereby allowing him to avert death. However, he had been struck by the divine demon sword, and thus it was impossible for him to reverse the passage of time. After all, he was no celestial. Pa! Zhong Badu's body exploded into pieces, causing flesh and blood to rain down on the surroundings. His divine sense had already been destroyed by the divine demon sword, so it was impossible for him to revive. Heaven and earth grieved, expressing their sorrow at the passing of a saint. Ah! There was a furious roar as an elite strode over from Gathered Sea's planet in a single step. He was tall and solidly built, yet his hair was already white and his appearance was already extremely old. However, the aura that radiated from him was like that of a wild demon, so formidable and imposing that no one dared to look at him directly. He was none other than the medium saint ancestor of the Long tribe. Brat, you're seeking death, the Long tribe ancestor roared as he unleashed an explosive punch at Ling Han. A strange expression involuntarily spread across Ling Han's face. Although this punch appeared extremely domineering, its destructive ability was in fact severely limited. If he faced this punch head-on, he would at most be sent flying an incredibly great distance. However, he wouldn't suffer any severe wounds. This old man had intentions of covering for him. Interesting. Very interesting. By the looks of it, it wasn't only Long Yushan who had been against the marriage. Even the ancestor of the Long tribe had actually been against this marriage. It was just that the open clouds forbidden land was far too powerful, meaning that the Long tribe had no ability to reject their proposal. However, now that Ling Han had killed Zhong Badu, there was no more groom for the bride to be wed to. That being the case, how could the wedding proceed? However, the ancestor of the Long tribe naturally couldn't pat Ling Han on the shoulders and congratulate him on a job well done, could he? Thus, it was imperative that he lashed out and acted as if he were boiling with rage. He would send Ling Han flying with this punch, and then chase him for a while before giving up. He would then naturally return back to the Long tribe. The fact that Ling Han could kill Zhong Badu signified that he already possessed the battle prowess of a saint. Thus, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for him, a medium saint, to fail to catch up to him. To say nothing of medium saints, even saint kings couldn't necessarily catch up to small saints. The punch landed, and Ling Han violently spat a mouthful of blood before letting the momentum carry him, and instantly vanishing into a small black dot in the distance. This blood wasn't his, but rather blood that he had retrieved from the Black Tower from some black dog. Don't run, you wicked brat, the ancestor of the Long tribe roared. He unfurled a golden path as he chased after Ling Han. At the same time, he couldn't help but praise him in his mind. This brat was truly clever, and he had instantly understood his true intentions. Not only that, but he had even cooperated with him perfectly. If he hadn't been so sure of the power of his own strike, he would have truly questioned whether or not his strike had actually crippled Ling Han. He hurriedly flew after Ling Han, yet he realized that he couldn't find him anymore. He was genuinely stunned this time. Was Ling Han's truly this quick? He was so quick that even he couldn't catch up to him. He stopped in mid-air and pretended to scan his surroundings. This action would be recorded in his memory, and he could use it to convince the open clouds forbidden land of his actions in the future. Anyhow, it was a pleasant surprise that Ling Han possessed such techniques. It also saved him quite a bit of acting and effort. After scanning the surroundings, he proceeded to return to Gathered Sea's planet. A saint had died here, and they were more so an individual who had a saint king in their clan. Thus, this was naturally a critical event that he had to treat with utmost care. Ling Han exited the Black Tower and calmly retrieved the cloud-piercing shuttle. He then casually flew into the distance. This time, he wouldn't return to Wood Figure Planet. Instead, his destination was Joint Peace Planet. Since he had already gathered all 4 materials, he naturally had to return to visit the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. This return journey took quite a long time, requiring an entire 2.5 years to complete. However, Ling Han, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and the others didn't waste this time. With an abundant supply of alchemical pills and the reincarnation tree, they all used this time to raise their cultivation level. Upon arriving on Joint Peace Planet, the Empress suddenly awoke from her deep-level cultivation. She had succeeded. She had cultivated 10 million heavenly bodies, the pinnacle amount for heavenly body tier cultivators. Ling Han was overjoyed at this, and he couldn't help but pick the Empress up and spin her around a few times. He was extremely happy for the Empress. Although 10 million heavenly bodies was the theoretical maximum for the Eternal River tier, no one had ever actually reached this pinnacle before. In other words, the Empress had created history. This also signified that her future was indescribably bright and limitless. Regarding the fact that the Empress could now strive to reach the Saint tier, and then make love with him, this hadn't actually crossed his mind at this moment. Of course, he would naturally think of this after calming down from his wild excitement. Now, however, he was purely feeling happiness for the Empress. The Empress was naturally ecstatic as well. She wrapped her arms around Ling Han's shoulders and pressed his face into her large and soft breasts. When Ling Han finally put her down, she leaned forward slightly and pecked him on the lips. "I'll be able to advance to the Saint tier soon," she whispered into Ling Han's ears. A sweet fragrance wafted into Ling Han's nose. Ling Han was intoxicated, and he involuntarily hugged the Empress even tighter. One of his hands started to naughtily creep towards the Empress' voluptuous breasts. "Are you trying to seduce me?" he asked. "Of course," the Empress admitted without hesitation. "You seductress." Ling Han passionately kissed her a few times, yet didn't dare to go any further. He was already feeling the urge to push the Empress over and make love with her with no regard for anything else. However, since he had already waited for this long, he naturally couldn't cave in now. A charming smile spread across the Empress' face. The two of them exited the Black Tower, while the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden continued to cultivate inside. She was also a step away from advancing to the Saint tier. The inheritance from the 3 true phoenixes was truly astounding. One day passed, and they finally arrived at the Great Ling Empire. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" The ministers of the Imperial Empire all came out to greet Ling Han and the others. Among them were his 2 brothers, Feng Peyun and Murong Qing. Meanwhile, the rock golem started to run around Ling Han like a dog, an obsequious expression on its face. Ling Han laughed loudly as he wrapped his arms around his brother's shoulders and walked to the palace with them. He spent some time reminiscing with his brothers before raising the level of the rock golem. Only then did he set off for the agriculture-enclosed mountains, where the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire rested. He didn't know if the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was severely wounded, or if he had been suppressed there. In any case, the lower realm held a huge number of secrets that could attract the attention of even celestial kings, for example, the Black Tower. Celestial kings, these were beings who stood at the pinnacle of the celestial realm. Moreover, each of them had created their own cultivation techniques after studying and analyzing the cultivation techniques of the other celestial kings. For example, the creator of the indestructible heaven scroll had also absorbed the knowledge and ideas of many other celestial kings in the process of creating this cultivation technique. Ling Han and the Empress arrived in the depths of the agriculture-enclosed mountains, and stood before the cave that radiated with an air of boundless darkness. Both of them had already reached the pinnacle level of the eternal river tier, yet they were still unable to see through this profound darkness. "I'll tie this rope to my waist, and if I don't return after a day, then use it to drag me out," Ling Han said to the Empress. The Empress nodded in reply. They were naturally well prepared this time. Ling Han tied the rope to his waist, and this was a rope that had been made from the silk of an azure cloud spider. In other words, it was extremely strong and tough, resistant to even sharp blades. Ling Han then strode into the darkness of the cave. Chapter 1620, Meeting the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire again. Darkness enveloped Ling Han as he entered the cave, weakening his senses of sight, hearing, and touch. In the end, he was completely stripped of all of his senses, just like the first time. In fact, he couldn't even sense his own existence anymore, could sense neither the flow of his origin power or the beat of his heart. It was as if he were lying in eternal slumber in a dark and silent tomb. He couldn't escape this phenomenon, even as an eternal river tier cultivator. Ling Han activated his killing formations and unleashed an attack. In reality, he was unsure of whether he had actually launched an attack or not. All he could sense was that he had perhaps launched the attack. However, nothing changed at all. By the looks of it, even a saint-level power was unable to overcome this profound darkness. Ling Han was now certain that this was something created by a celestial-level elite. After pondering for a moment, he retrieved his divine demon sword. A tiny orb of light instantly appeared. Although this light was hazy, it was something that Ling Han could genuinely see. Sure enough, celestial-level power was able to resist this darkness. However, the divine demon sword still wasn't powerful enough. Ling Han put away the divine demon sword. Boom! The 9 heavens flame exploded to life on his hand, and it was instantly as if a small candle had been lit in the pitch darkness of the cave. Although its brightness was incredibly dim, it was still sufficient as a light source. This can work. Ling Han was elated upon discovering this. Wherever the 9 heavens flame shone, he was able to fully regain his senses. It was as if he had come back to life. He stuck to the cave wall as he advanced. Due to the limited amount of light, he could only ensure that he was on the right path if he stuck by the cave wall. In fact, this cave wasn't actually that deep. However, because of Ling Han's slow pace, it took him an entire half a day to finally arrive at the deepest part of the cave. Here, there was a stone room with 4 bare walls. In the middle of it, there rested a stone statue that hadn't changed a single bit compared to the last time that he had been here. It was as if that were just yesterday. "Huh? Brat, how did you get here?" the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire asked in astonishment. Indeed, Ling Han had only managed to get here last time thanks to the help of Hunyo. Meanwhile, Ling Han himself had been like a headless chicken. Now, however, Ling Han had actually come here by himself. This was indeed something that was surprising. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "If Senior doesn't welcome me, I can take my leave right away." "Hold it right there," the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire hurriedly said. "Have you obtained the 4 items?" "Yes, I was fortunate enough to obtain them all," Ling Han answered with a nod. "But you're clearly only at the Eternal River tier." "Huh?" The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire suddenly faltered before saying, "You're a bloody freak. You've actually inscribed that many formations inside your body? Although each of them is pathetically weak by itself, the entirety of them is able to elevate your battle prowess to the low extreme of the Genesis tier. Even I was unable to achieve this during my time." Ling Han laughed, and said, does Senior believe me when I say that I've already completed the mission now? Where are they? Hurry up and give them to me, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said in a slightly tense and nervous voice. That, no pay, no goods, Ling Han said. Stinky brat, are you afraid that I'll cheat you? In any case, the technique that I promised you isn't a top-notch celestial. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire immediately shut up upon realizing that he had made a slip of the tongue. Oh. Ling Han said with a nod. So Senior was planning to use an ordinary celestial technique to trick me. Ahaha, the immovable deity metal body is a mystical power that I spent a lot of effort to obtain from an ancient site. Although it's not my most powerful technique, it's already more than powerful enough for you. Anyhow, you won't be able to learn it if it's too powerful anyway, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire explained. What could he do now that Ling Han had the power over his lifeline? In reality, Ling Han had only made the remark jokingly. Celestial techniques were indeed ranked in terms of power, but one also needed to take into account their suitability. In terms of this, Ling Han felt that the immovable deity metal body was an extremely good fit for himself. Then please teach me the technique, Senior. Ling Han retrieved the true dragon horn, heavenly phoenix feather, and the other two items as he said this. A soft glow appeared on the stone statue before a white light orb floated out and hovered toward Ling Han. Ling Han raised his hand and tapped the white orb with his finger. Countless symbols instantly flashed in his mind, teaching him secret techniques that couldn't be expressed through words. This was none other than the mystical power, immovable deity metal body. Brat, place these 4 divine items around the stone statue as I specify, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said. Ling Han did as he was told. Meanwhile, he communicated with Small Tower in his mind, preparing to respond should the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire suddenly decide to attack him. If that were to happen, he would respond with force even if that meant running the risk of having the Black Tower being discovered by the Celestial Kings. If he lost his life, what use would keeping this secret be? Crackle. An arc of lightning burst forth from the left eye of the stone statue, while a column of fire burst forth from its right eye. Meanwhile, the stone statue radiated with a soft glow as the true dragon horn and other 3 items rose into the air. The items then started to resonate with each other before suddenly fusing together into one. At the same time, the arc of lightning and the column of fire intertwined together in a fierce and blazing display. The sight of this was so intense that Ling Han was unable to see what was occurring inside of them. After a long while, the brilliant radiance finally dimmed down, allowing Ling Han to see a small person appear before him. This was a child who looked to be around 3 years old. He was stark naked, and his skin was white and delicate. Ling Han suddenly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. This isn't the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, is it? Stinky brat, what are you staring at? Hurry up and give me some clothes. Sure enough, the child spoke in an adult-like voice. How many years has it been? I can finally use my mouth to speak. This is incredible. Ling Han tossed him some clothes, and said, was Senior severely wounded? So you remained here to recuperate? You guessed it, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said with a sigh. At that time, I possessed extraordinary talent, so I naturally became arrogant and conceited, offending many people. As a result, I was hunted by an elite, and my physical body was completely obliterated by him. A wisp of my damaged soul came to the ancient realm, and I had initially wanted to find a body to possess. However, there was unexpected turbulence in the space, and I somehow ended up arriving in this small world. There's a mysterious power in this place, and it suppressed me upon my arrival. The situation was so dire that I was forced to rest my soul in an underground sea of lightning and fire for tens of thousands of years before I was finally able to form that stone statue. My initial plan was to guide the explorers of this cave to help me. However, I was unexpectedly unable to control my own defensive power. Although the boundless darkness offered my damaged soul protection, it also became the shackles that bound me to this place. Thanks to the girl last time, and you this time, I'm finally able to free myself from this place. Although this body is incomparable to a divine fetus, it's still a body that's been formed from 4 saintly materials, after all. I guess it's just passable for use. After all, the power of celestials comes from their divine senses, and not from their physical bodies. Ling Han quietly listened to him speak. He discovered that the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had the potential to become a chatterbox. He had only asked him a single question, yet the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had given him an essay as an answer. Or perhaps he had been lonely for too long, so he couldn't help but speak more now that he could finally talk to a real person. What does Senior plan to do next? Ling Han asked. Cultivate, of course. Although I've refined my new body from 4 saintly materials, it's only saintly material, after all. Right now, my cultivation level is only at the low extreme of the Genesis tier. Moreover, my divine sense is still severely wounded, and it's impossible for me to fully recover in the short term, the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire replied with a sigh. Dare I ask, Senior, what was your cultivation level in the past? Ling Han asked in curiosity. Immortal Palace tier. Chapter 1621, Another One. The Severing Mundane tier, Dividing Soul tier, Immortal Palace tier, Ascending Origin tier, and Celestial King tier. The Immortal Palace tier was the 3rd major tier of the Celestial Realm, and this was equivalent to the Heavenly Body tier in the Immortal Realm. One could already be regarded as an elite after reaching this cultivation level. Ling Han gazed at the child before him, and he could no longer bring himself to call him a senior. Doing so would feel far too strange. He chuckled, and said, "Don't you have a name?" The child puffed his chest out, and said, "I'm called the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire." He looked as haughty and arrogant as could be. Ling Han shot a sideways glance at him and didn't reply. He had already fulfilled his agreement with him, and both of them had already obtained what they desired. Thus, neither of them owed the other. That being the case, he patted his hands and started to leave the cave. However, after taking just a step, he felt a tug on his clothes. Glancing back, he saw that there was a small hand tightly gripping the corner of his clothes. Say, your courage hasn't shrunken along with your size, has it? You're too afraid to leave by yourself? Ling Han asked with a smile. Pay. When I traveled the world before, which ancient site was I afraid to enter? You actually dare to say that I'm cowardly? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wore an expression of disdain. Then why are you tugging on my clothes? Ling Han asked. I don't know how to leave this place, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire replied with an awkward expression. Pooh! Ling Han instantly spluttered with laughter. You were the one who created this place, yet you're unable to leave by yourself now? Rubbish! I set this place up when I was still relatively powerful. However, my strength is only at the low extreme of the Genesis tier now, so how can I leave? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said through clenched teeth. Why was this stinky brat so difficult? Couldn't he just lead the way out when told to? Ling Han pondered for a moment before asking, any guidance fees? You. How bloody avaricious. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wore a surprised look. Why hadn't he realized that this brat was such an avaricious person before? Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, I'm just kidding, don't take it so seriously. However, if you truly want to thank me, I'm not against receiving some small benefits. After all, that would be your expression of gratitude. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire rolled his eyes in reply. Ling Han had already rendered him completely speechless. Meanwhile, Ling Han activated his 9 heavens flame to ward off the darkness. Huh! The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire was astonished upon seeing this. Why do I feel such apprehension toward these flames? Even if I were at the peak of my powers, I still wouldn't want to touch these flames. Ling Han didn't explain. Ancestral flames were far too precious. The two of them were on relatively good terms right now, and he didn't want this relationship to be ruined because of some treasures. The two of them started to exit the cave. However, after making it 2/3 of the way out, Ling Han suddenly felt the rope around his waist start to tighten. As it turned out, one day had already passed, and the Empress was starting to drag him back out as per their agreement. As such, his speed instantly became much quicker, and the child behind him started to billow in the wind like the sail of a ship. Whoosh! Before long, they had already arrived at the mouth of the cave. Huh! A look of astonishment flashed across the Empress' face as she saw the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire. Ling Han had entered the cave alone, yet he had now come back out with a child? This was naturally very strange. However, she could sense the powerful aura of the child, and this made her feel as if she were facing a formidable enemy. Oh, this young lady is truly beautiful. I've never seen anyone more beautiful than her, even in the celestial realm, the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire remarked of the Empress. That's my wife, don't stare so much. Ling Han used his hands to cover the child's eyes as he said this. She won't lose a chunk of flesh or anything if I look at her. How stingy. The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire muttered. Perhaps it was because he was too young right now, and this also affected his way of thinking, but he didn't continue to stare at the stunningly beautiful Empress. I've got nothing to do anyway, so I'll just follow you around for now. I'll return to the celestial realm after I advance to the high extreme of the Genesis tier. You're really not holding back, are you? A strange smile tugged at the corners of Ling Han's lips, and he said, Say, don't regret this decision of yours in the future. He had far too many enemies. At least, the open clouds forbidden land might come over and hunt him down at any moment. In reality, he hadn't resolved his problems with the 8 stones forbidden land, either. If they confirmed that he couldn't attain the power of a Saint King anymore, they would definitely continue to target him. In terms of the celestial realm, he had also destroyed Han Chi's physical body. Thus, it was hard to say whether or not a severing mundane tier Grand Elder might suddenly come to hunt him down one day. Following him would be fraught with danger. However, how could the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire know that Ling Han was such a troublemaker? He wore an indifferent expression upon hearing Ling Han's remark. In any case, he was a small saint right now, and his battle prowess could more so rival that of a medium saint. Thus, how many people in the ancient realm would he need to be afraid of? It would be interesting to see what expression he wore the day that a bunch of great saints and saint kings, perhaps even severing mundane tier grand elders, appeared before Ling Han. Ling Han returned to the Great Ling Empire to leave some cultivation resources for them before retrieving his cloud-piercing shuttle and setting off for Woodfigure Planet. Meanwhile, the Empress entered the Black Tower to continue her cultivation and comprehension. She was going to advance to the Saint tier as quickly as she could. Her breakthrough would definitely be an earth-shattering event. She possessed a divine fetus, Celestial King tier cultivation techniques, and had also formed 10 million heavenly bodies and cultivated the regulations of the 2 realms. Thus, her power would reach the peak stage of the small saint once she broke through to the saint tier, and her battle prowess would also be incredible. Otherwise, it would be completely unjust to the 10 million heavenly bodies that she had spent so much time and effort in forming. As for the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire, he wasn't surprised at all that Ling Han possessed a spatial god tool. After all, these were far too common in the celestial realm. Moreover, he was clearly a lazy person, as he would rather hitch a ride with the cloud-piercing shuttle and spend more time rather than travel by himself. Anyhow, Ling Han also took this chance to ask him some questions. This further deepened his understanding of the celestial realm. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had been at the Immortal Palace tier at the time, so he was quite familiar with many aspects of the celestial realm. However, there were also many things that he didn't know about. This was due to the limitation of his cultivation level. Why did so few people come to the ancient realm from the celestial realm? After all, there were clearly vast expanses of land here. Why didn't they conquer this land? The answer to this was simple: the celestial realm itself was also boundlessly large. In the celestial realm, the units used to describe different forces were in terms of cities, and each of these cities was as large as a great star. In fact, some colossal cities were as large as an entire galaxy. Thus, just the territory of the celestial realm was already enough for them to battle over. As such, very few people saw any value in conquering a barren place such as the ancient realm. Moreover, why was the celestial realm called the celestial realm? This was because the celestial realm contained an undying divine essence. This divine essence was the key to achieving immortality. If one left this environment for too long, they would suffer an irreversible process of having their lifespan severed. Thus, even celestials would become no different from ordinary Genesis tier saints. To sacrifice one's life for the sake of conquering some land that was next to useless? Who would do something so utterly stupid? Indeed, those who entered the ancient realm were all members of the younger generation who hadn't reached the severing mundane tier yet. They needed to rely on the help of their clan to push them into the ancient realm. Moreover, their purpose for coming here was primarily to train. In addition to that, they would also search for the treasures that had been lost in the ancient realm during the great turmoil of yore. For example, Han Chi had come for these exact purposes. However, even the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wasn't aware of the reasons behind the great turmoil. According to rumors, it was instigated by the celestial kings, and thus only the celestial kings would know of the true reason. 2 years passed, and the cloud-piercing shuttle arrived on Woodfigure Planet. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had just attained rebirth, so he immediately sprinted off to explore the land. He was a small saint, and his battle prowess could rival that of medium saints. Moreover, he could easily escape and flee even if he came across a great saint whom he couldn't defeat. Thus, Ling Han wasn't worried about him at all. "Ling Han, let me out," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden suddenly said through the black tower. Ling Han let the heavenly phoenix divine maiden out, only to suddenly discover that her aura was incredibly wild and turbulent. His expression involuntarily changed. She was about to break through to the Genesis tier. Chapter 1622, Becoming a Saint One After Another. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had received the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, and this had elevated her bloodline to the pinnacle level of the immortal realm. Moreover, she had a constant supply of alchemical pills from Ling Han, and she was also able to comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree. Thus, there were almost no obstacles hindering her cultivation. As such, how could her cultivation speed not be insanely quick? If they hadn't been held up in the netherworld for 10 years, perhaps she would have reached the Genesis tier even sooner. Now, however, she was finally breaking through after having accumulated her comprehensions and cultivation for so long. She simply smiled at Ling Han before leaping up into the sky. If she underwent her heavenly tribulation here, it was entirely possible that she might obliterate the entire Woodfigure planet. Ling Han naturally followed her into the sky as well. Although he wouldn't be able to help her, he still had to remain by her side, and watch her undergo her heavenly tribulation. Boom! Dark thunderclouds formed in the icy-cold dark sky above the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's head, and the first bolt of lightning was already fervently striking down at her. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden unfurled her wings that measured a whopping 500 kilometers in length as she looked up to meet the lightning strike. This was bound to be an intense clash. In the blink of an eye, 10 golden paths had already unfurled toward this area as the Star Sand Saint and the other saints made their way over. Upon seeing that it was the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden undergoing heavenly tribulation, they were all stunned beyond words. Apart from the Star Sand Saint, the 9 other saints had all attended the disciple recruitment ceremony at that time. However, which of them had held high hopes for the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden at that time? If it weren't for the extremely good memory of saints, perhaps they would have already forgotten about this person they had labeled as only having ordinary talent. Indeed, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's talent had only been worthy of such a label at that time, especially among the sea of prodigies gathered at the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. However, who could have imagined that someone with such ordinary talent would one day become a saint? In fact, even the Star Sand Saint was slightly red-faced with embarrassment now. At that time, he had chosen Gu Daoyi to become his disciple. Even so, he had expected Gu Daoyi to require at least 10,000 to become a saint. However, how long had passed now? Yet this woman had already reached this stage. It was as if those close to Ling Han were all freaks. It's only been 3 years, yet 2 saints have actually appeared in quick succession. How incredible, the 10 saints exclaimed in emotion. Ling Han was slightly surprised upon hearing this. 2 saints? He strode over, and asked, who else has become a saint? Notionless, the torrential rain saint replied. Oh, the notionless saint has become a saint again. Ling Han didn't find this strange at all. After all, the notionless saint already possessed the complete comprehensions of a saint. Moreover, he possessed a 5-element body now, and he also had an endless supply of alchemical pills. Thus, it was only natural that he had become a saint sooner than the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. It was just that the notionless saint wouldn't have any more past experience to go off now, and as a result, his cultivation speed would become much, much slower. He would definitely be overtaken by the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. In fact, even the Empress and Ling Han would overtake him. Where is he? Ling Han asked. He couldn't see the notionless saint anywhere. He left 1 month after becoming a saint, and no one knows where he's gone, the torrential rain saint replied. He didn't dare to act senior before Ling Han. Of course he didn't. Even the Star Sand Saint had to treat Ling Han as an equal, so if he dared to act senior, then wouldn't he be looking down on his own master? Ling Han frowned upon hearing this. He was aware of the notionless saint's will to exact revenge on his 3 traitorous disciples. However, the notionless saint had also mentioned before that after so many years, his 3 disciples had most likely all become saints already. As such, victory wasn't assured if he went by himself. However, he had set off already, so it wouldn't make a difference regardless of how worried Ling Han felt. He could only hope that the notionless saint wouldn't come across any troubles. In any case, he was a small saint, so it would be extremely difficult for others to kill him unless he stubbornly battled to the death himself. Boom! Heavenly tribulation was devastating, and this was more so the case for those advancing to the Genesis tier. After enduring this heavenly tribulation, one would receive the recognition of heaven and earth. In some way, this signified that they were the envoys of heaven and earth. Thus, this tribulation was extremely difficult to overcome. Fortunately, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had received the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, and thus her battle prowess was far superior to what it was before. She was able to withstand her heavenly tribulation with ease. Half a day passed, and her heavenly tribulation finally came to an end. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden immediately unfurled a golden path and went to Ling Han's side. Although she had still suffered some minor wounds, they were of absolutely no significance. Congratulations, fellow cultivator, the 9 small saints said to the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden as they clasped their hands in congratulations. Since she was already a saint, they naturally had to treat her as an equal. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden nodded with a modest smile. She wasn't as proud as the empress, and she was still fairly polite toward other people. Right now, she appeared timid and gentle as she stood beside Ling Han, and this caused the other saints to all feel envious. It was already difficult enough for one to become a saint, much less find a partner who was also a saint. Ling Han was bound to become a saint, and at that time, both husband and wife would be a saint. This was incredibly rare. Ling Han, the empress suddenly called. Ling Han's expression involuntarily became strange. It can't be this coincidental, can it? You're also going to break through, he asked with his divine sense. The empress replied with a nod. I was right. Ling Han waved his hand and let the empress out of the black tower. The empress immediately took a step, striding to where the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had endured her heavenly tribulation just then. Rumble. The thunderclouds that had just disappeared started to gather above her again. Star Sand Saint. 9 Small Saint. Do saints come wholesale in your family? They're going to endure heavenly tribulation one after another? Thinking back to the past, which of them hadn't needed to experience countless years of cultivation and accumulation? Only then had they been able to release all of their accumulated comprehensions at once and break through to become a Genesis tier saint. However, it was as if these young cultivators were on steroids, enabling them to break through to the Genesis tier in quick succession in just a few dozen years. To compare themselves to these people would indeed drive them nuts. This. The Star Sand Saint suddenly exclaimed. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden's heavenly tribulation had been extremely ordinary. However, something was slightly off now. This woman's heavenly tribulation appeared to be far too terrifying. In fact, it was so terrifying that even he felt a cold chill run down his spine. Meanwhile, the 9 small saints involuntarily took a step back. This heavenly tribulation was yet to fall, yet their hair was already standing on ends in apprehension. Crack! The first bolt of lightning crashed down, transforming into a humanoid war god as it did so. Upon materializing, it immediately thrust the spear in its hand toward the empress. Gasp! The 9 small saints were stunned. This strike is enough to kill any of us. Just how powerful were they? Even medium saints would find it incredibly difficult to kill them with a single strike. Doing so would require a great saint. No wonder the Star Sand Saint had exclaimed in astonishment. This heavenly tribulation was on the level of great saints. Heavens! Is this really a heavenly tribulation for someone who's only just advancing to the Genesis tier? If the 9 saints came across a great saint, they would still have the ability to flee even if they were unable to rival them. However, heavenly tribulation was a test from heaven and earth. Who could escape this test? To face the attack of a great saint as a small saint would only yield one result: death. However, the Empress was completely unafraid as she flipped her slender hands and unleashed celestial technique after celestial technique to clash with her heavenly tribulation. In fact, she showed no signs of struggle. The saints were rendered speechless upon seeing this. You've only just become a small saint, yet you're already rivaling the attacks of a great saint? Is there still any sense in this world? Just then, they had still been thinking about how they had missed the biggest gem in the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Now, however, they realized that they had missed an even bigger gem. This was a supreme prodigy that even Gu Daoyi had absolutely no hope of matching. Crack, crack, crack. Bolts of tribulation lightning continued to crash down, forming more and more humanoid bolts of lightning. Each of them possessed the power of a great saint, and they were more so impossible to completely destroy. They would immediately regather upon being smashed apart, and it was clear that they were indestructible and undying. When the number of lightning humanoids reached 50, they finally underwent a qualitative change, and were able to completely suppress the Empress. Humph! The Empress shot a piercing gaze at the lightning humanoids. Swish, swish, swish. Several figures leaped out from within her. These were her 9 doppelgangers. The 10 empresses then immediately started to fight their heavenly tribulation together. Chapter 1623, Reverse Domination. This was truly a spectacular sight to behold. There were a total of 60 saint-level individuals locked in this intense battle, and they were more so all at the level of Great Saint. To say nothing of the Tranquil Heart Saint and the other small saints, even the Star Sand Saint was absolutely stunned by this sight. He knew that if it were him in that battle, he would most definitely be killed. In other words, he was already no match for the Empress. Good heavens! Although he was only at the early stage of the Great Saint, the Empress had only just become a small saint. Just how large was the gap between great saints and small saints? Only Ling Han knew how extraordinary the Empress truly was. To say nothing else, just the fact that she had formed 10 million heavenly bodies was already astounding enough. What kind of concept was this? If her battle prowess weren't heaven-defying as a result, who would waste their time to cultivate to the pinnacle level? The appearance of the Empress' 9 doppelgangers didn't simply elevate her offensive power. At the same time, each of her bodies could spread the damage that they received over the 9 other bodies. Simply put, this was equivalent to weakening Heavenly Tribulation's attacks by a factor of 10. With her offensive power strengthened and the damage that she received weakened, the Empress immediately gained an absolute advantage over her Heavenly Tribulation. Half a day passed, and her Heavenly Tribulation finally disappeared. The Empress stood proudly, a look of disdain in her eyes as she gazed at the sky. Her domineering demeanor was as if she would beat the heavens without hesitation if it had a physical form. In the next instant, however, she immediately went to Ling Han's side, a bright and beautiful smile blooming on her face. This smile could intoxicate even saints. However, which of the saints dared to have any improper thoughts about her now? "Congratulations, fellow cultivator," the Star Sand Saint said. Gasp! Even the Star Sand Saint was referring to her as fellow cultivator. This signified that he completely acknowledged the Empress' strength as equal to his. In reality, the Empress was even more powerful than him. "Congratulations, Senior," the 9 small saints said respectfully. They bowed their heads slightly as they clasped their hands in congratulations. The sky was filled with an aromatic fragrance at this moment, and this was an expression of joy from heaven and earth. A saint had been born, and they could inherit and convey the will of heaven and earth. The Empress wore a proud smile. She couldn't care less whether these people congratulated her or not. In her world, she only needed that one person. As for the others, she wouldn't even spare them so much as a glance. Thanks everyone. Ling Han thanked the saints for the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. The 10 saints were all extremely envious of him. Not only did he have a saint as a wife, but he even had another. In fact, he actually had 3. Hunyo had already become a saint long ago, and she was currently cultivating in the celestial realm. Moreover, even Zhu Xianer and Lu Yutong, with their ordinary talent, also had chances to become a saint. Thus, it truly wasn't anything special for Ling Han to have saint-tier wives. Ling Han returned to Wood Figure Planet with his 2 wives. Upon learning that the Empress and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had become saints, the Rain Emperor and the others were all overjoyed. However, they also felt immense pressure at the same time. They were men, so how could they be surpassed by women? And 2 at that. A grand feast was held, and the entire martial arts academy was celebrating. 2 saints had appeared in quick succession, so was this not impressive enough? Zi Chenfeng, second in the world, and Hong Ma all sighed with emotion. Not long ago, they had still been able to fight toe-to-toe with Ling Han. Now, however, 2 of his wives had already become saints. Moreover, Ling Han had even killed 2 saint kings by himself. Just how humongous was the gulf between them now? When this gap had been small, it could still spur them on to chase after him. However, when this gap grew to become an insurmountable gulf that they could only look up to, who would still have the blind confidence to chase after him or surpass him? The grand feast lasted for an entire 15 days before it finally came to an end. Even Ling Han felt a bit tired after all this celebration. He told himself that he would definitely have to keep it low-key when he advanced to the Genesis tier to avoid all this hassle. However, upon remembering that he still had the mesmerizing Empress waiting for him to taste, his heartbeat couldn't help but quicken. He lightly walked into the Empress room. The Empress was currently sitting in front of a mirror and applying makeup. She was already breathtakingly beautiful, and with a small bit of makeup, she didn't become any more beautiful. This was because she had already reached the pinnacle level of beauty. However, her seductiveness did indeed go off the charts. Ling Han involuntarily gulped in excitement. He walked over and wrapped his arms around the Empress' slender waist, saying, "I'll do your eyebrows for you." The Empress smiled at him through the mirror, and her smile was like tens of thousands of flowers in full bloom. She handed the eyebrow pencil to Ling Han before turning around to face him. Her starry eyes were like water, and her cherry lips were like fire. Beneath her pale neck, one could vaguely discern the magnificent curves that were enough to make one palpitate with excitement. Ling Han raised the eyebrow pencil, yet he couldn't bring it to the Empress' brow no matter what. There was no wine to intoxicate him, yet he had already become drunk. He had been intoxicated by the Empress' mesmerizing charm. He tossed the eyebrow pencil aside and used his fingers to lift the Empress' chin. He lowered his head, and passionately locked lips with her. As if the heavenly thunder had stirred the earth fire, a blazing intensity overtook them as they started to passionately kiss each other. At the same time, their hands moved up and down as they started to remove each other's clothing. Ling Han was extremely fervent. He had already endured for 100 years, and he was so thirsty that his heart was almost about to melt. He scooped the Empress up and placed her on the bed before pouncing on top of her like a wild beast. However, just as things were getting steamy, Ling Han suddenly stopped. The Empress moaned softly. She opened her starry and watery eyes. Ling Han couldn't help but feel awkward, saying, "I've reined myself in so many times that I'm not even sure how to continue." The Empress involuntarily chuckled. She then suddenly flipped around and pressed Ling Han beneath her, becoming a cowgirl. "No, I can't be reverse dominated by you the first time." Ling Han tried to resist and take the lead again. However, just how powerful was the Empress now? She could suppress those at the early stage or even middle stage of the great saint, so how could she not suppress Ling Han, who only possessed the battle prowess of a small saint? Ling Han could only struggle in vain. After a while, the Empress' silky hair started to billow in the air as she started to rock back and forth like a cowgirl. A feeling of immense pleasure swept over Ling Han, and it was as if all of his bones were about to melt. However, he was also feeling slightly vexed. He had actually been reverse dominated. Reverse dominated. The aroma of love filled the room as they passionately made love with each other. The next morning, Ling Han opened his eyes with incredible joy, only to see the Empress curled up in his lap like a small cat. He couldn't help but chuckle upon seeing this. He hadn't imagined that the Empress would look like this when sleeping. Although they had already become husband and wife since long ago, Ling Han had never slept with her before for fear of accidentally going too far too early. However, his breathing suddenly quickened again. Under the thin sheets, he could see that the Empress wasn't wearing anything at all. Her naked body instantly aroused his lust again, and he eagerly tossed aside the sheets before pulling them over again. A rhythmic movement appeared under the sheets, accompanied by the cat-like moans of the Empress. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Ling Han and the Empress hadn't left the bed even once. It was as if they yearned to make up for their 100 years of pent-up passion. They stared at each other lovingly, and they were preparing to make love if they weren't already in the process of making love. Half a month passed, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden finally couldn't hold back any longer. She walked in to get the two of them out of bed, yet the price she paid for doing so was being dragged into bed by Ling Han. What ensued was a steamy and passionate threesome. She was embarrassed to death, yet the Empress didn't mind at all. She would throw her full support behind it as long as it made Ling Han happy. However, their number one priority right now was cultivation, and they would still have heaps of time to enjoy themselves in the future. After all, they still couldn't be regarded as the most powerful beings of the ancient realm. Saint Kings were still huge mountains that were insurmountable to them. The Empress and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden both entered the Black Tower to cultivate. They needed to stabilize their cultivation level. Meanwhile, Ling Han also needed to reach the true pinnacle of the Eternal River tier as soon as possible. When he succeeded, he would then proceed to advance to the Genesis tier. The Empress had displayed to him the formidable battle prowess that 10 million heavenly bodies could bring, and this was something that he strongly yearned to obtain. Previously we spelled them Zhu Xian and Lu Yutong, respectively, but that's the fad in Singapore and some other places, and the current spelling is the mainland China one. Chapter 1624, The Zhong clan has come. Time slowly crept by. In the blink of an eye, another year had already passed. Both the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden had completely stabilized their cultivation. The Empress' cultivation was especially terrifying, and the level of her origin power had already reached the peak stage of the small saint. Her 10 million heavenly bodies already couldn't evolve anymore. During the past year, she had spent almost all of her time cultivating under the reincarnation tree. She would only occasionally leave to make love with Ling Han. Under the reincarnation tree, 1 year was equivalent to over 3,000 years. Add to that the divine fetus of the Empress, and her comprehensions were able to completely catch up to her cultivation level. At this moment, she had truly reached the peak stage of the small saint. This was an unfathomable speed. Moreover, it could be seen that although her advance had been slow before, she had actually been accumulating experience and comprehension. By releasing her potential at once, she was able to easily soar to the peak stage of the small saint, and shift her target to the level of medium saint. Right now, the Empress could even rival those at the peak stage of the great saint if she unleashed her full battle prowess. She could surpass 8 stars. As for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, she was nowhere near this level. Although she had received the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, her cultivation speed still slowed down after she advanced to the saint tier. Right now, she was still at the early stage of the small saint, and was a considerable distance from reaching the middle stage. Meanwhile, Ling Han had set off on his path of frenzied breakthroughs. He didn't forget to swallow pills every day, and he had also continued to accumulate his origin power. Right now, he had already formed a staggering 6 million heavenly bodies. However, he would still need around 3 years to reach the maximum number of 10 million. This was already the fastest he could advance, unless there was some saint pill that he could wantonly take. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to advance any quicker. The others had also improved greatly, like the Rain Emperor who had already advanced to the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. He was also aiming to form 10 million heavenly bodies. In fact, the biggest surprise was the large black dog, who had actually become a saint. This detestable dog had actually become a saint. Not only did Ling Han find this strange, but everyone else also found it strange. Moreover, almost every student would grind their teeth in frustration and anger at the mention of the large black dog. After all, the large black dog was far too sinister and detestable. He found great joy in deriding others, and he had completely no morals to speak of. Not only that, but he had also found 2 new subordinates, now a rabbit and an old ginseng. The 3 of them caused endless turmoil in the martial arts academy. Afterward, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire also joined this strange group. The appearance of this child saint caused everyone's jaws to drop to the ground. Fortunately, they quickly learned that the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was actually the reincarnation of a saint. Even so, they were still shocked that he was able to recover his Genesis tier cultivation so quickly. In the end, however, this was at least still within the bounds of what they could accept as reasonable. At any rate, the appearance of 5 saints in just a few short years shattered the long-standing rumor that only one disciple of this generation could become a saint. Thus, all of the disciples found a renewed vigor. It didn't matter that their cultivation speed was a little slower, as they still had a sliver of chance to become a saint. On this day, a golden path suddenly materialized in the sky, bringing with it a saint. The saints of the Martial Arts Academy all came out to meet this unexpected guest. After all, a saint could cause huge amounts of damage if they suddenly launched an attack. Moreover, in terms of escape, small saints wouldn't be any inferior to saint kings. Thus, they had to be extremely cautious. However, this saint was none other than the notionless saint. Ling Han immediately went out to greet the notionless saint upon hearing of his arrival. However, he saw that the notionless saint looked extremely weak and fragile. It was clear that he had suffered severe wounds. What happened? Ling Han asked with a frown. After so many years together, he already viewed the notionless saint as a teacher and a friend. Thus, with his personality of protecting those close to him, he was naturally enraged upon seeing the notionless saint in such a sorry state. The notionless saint sighed, and said, "I left to seek revenge on my 3 traitorous disciples immediately after becoming a saint." However, the results naturally weren't great. At Ling Han's questioning, the notionless saint revealed that one of his disciples had already died countless years ago after failing in his attempt to become a saint. However, his 2 other disciples were extremely talented, and they had not only digested his previous fruits of cultivation, but they had even surpassed him to become medium saints. He had failed to exact revenge, and had even ended up being hunted himself. If it weren't for the fact that saints all possessed similar speed, his fate would have been much worse than just getting some severe wounds. It would have been extremely likely that he would have been killed. He had bitterly waited for countless years and finally become a saint again, yet his desired revenge seemed just as distant as before. This naturally caused him to feel frustrated. Seek revenge after advancing to become a medium saint? He wasn't confident that he could do so. After reaching the saint tier, just how difficult was it to advance another minor tier? How many hundreds of millions of years had passed? Yet his 2 disciples had only just advanced to the level of medium saint. If he wanted to catch up to their progressive that were even possible would need at least hundreds of millions of years. You need to have faith in yourself. Ling Han said as he patted the notionless saint's shoulder. Once I reach the saint tier, I'll make sure to research saint-level alchemical pills and refine some that can increase one's cultivation speed. I'll make it so that you can pummel your 2 unworthy disciples. This kind of bitter resentment naturally had to be resolved by the notionless saint himself. Relying on the power of others would dampen his ability to vent his anger. The notionless saint nodded upon hearing this. He was quite confident in Ling Han's abilities. At the same time, he couldn't help but sigh in emotion. At that time, just how correct had his decision to follow Ling Han been? He had not only regained his cultivation as a saint, but he even had the chance to advance to the level of medium saint or great saint. Several days passed, and another golden path unfurled through the sky. The Star Sand Saint and the other saints all felt slightly irritated. Should they erect a sign outside Wood Figure Planet, warning miscellaneous saints to stay away? They were arriving one after another, and it seemed like there was no end in sight. Wang! An overwhelming aura swept through the sky. This newest arrival was no small saint. Humph! The Star Sand Saint humphed in displeasure as he immediately pushed back against this aura. I'm Zhong Yi, from the open clouds forbidden land, an incredibly haughty and arrogant voice announced. There was an air of superiority in his voice. You're merely a medium saint. Don't you understand common courtesy? The Star Sand Saint asked. The golden path disappeared, revealing a middle-aged man. He was tall and lightly built, and his appearance was also extremely handsome. His hands were clasped behind his back, and it was clear that he was unafraid of the Star Sand Saint. The ancestor of my clan is a Saint King, and I've specifically come here on the orders of our ancestor. By looking down on me, are you also trying to look down on my ancestor? Is that your intention? The Star Sand Saint felt extremely frustrated. Having a Saint King as an ancestor was truly magnificent. If he were a lone cultivator, he naturally wouldn't allow a medium saint to act all high and mighty before him. He would definitely teach him a lesson as he saw fit. However, the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy was his blood and sweat, and it was something that he couldn't sacrifice or abandon. Thus, he didn't explode in anger, only asking in a grave voice, "For what reason have you come?" "Tell the detestable brat Ling Han to come out," Zhong said coldly. This brat had actually dared to kill a member of the Open Clouds Forbidden Land. Humph. The Star Sand Saint was at a loss for words. Why is it that troublemaker again? He couldn't help but accept the fact that Ling Han was far too good at causing trouble. For example, he had never seen a Saint King a dozen or so years ago. However, ever since Ling Han's arrival at the Martial Arts Academy, it was as if Saint Kings had suddenly become run-of-the-mill. They appeared before him one after another. Generally speaking, it was almost impossible to come across Saint Kings, much less offend them. But Ling Han? He somehow managed to offend such beings on a regular basis. What kind of physique did he possess? Did he bear some innate grudge against Saint Kings? "Oh, the Zhong clan has finally come to seek me," Ling Han said with a chuckle as he appeared. Standing beside him were the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. A medium saint had arrived, so they were naturally worried about Ling Han facing him alone. Zhong immediately looked toward Ling Han, and his pupils involuntarily contracted as he did so. Ling Han looked just like he did in the memory image. This was a junior who had yet to advance to the Genesis tier. Chapter 1625, Hand the Evil Brat Over. This was inconceivable. A cultivator at the Eternal River tier had actually killed a saint? Where was the iron rule of the martial arts world? However, this brat only possessed battle prowess at the peak stage of the small saint. Thus, killing Zhong Badu was already his upper limit. He would naturally have no chance of victory against a medium saint. Indeed, he had been sent flying by a smack from the ancestor of the Long tribe before. Zhong stared at Ling Han coldly, and said in a haughty voice, "Since you've already seen me, hurry up, kneel down to accept your death." Ling Han laughed, and said, "Do you understand reason or not?" "Reason?" Zhong said with a cold chuckle. "I'm a medium saint, so what I say is reason. In any case, you killed a member of my Zhong clan, so how can you still wish to live?" The Zhong clan was weaker than the other Forbidden Lands as it had only existed for a shorter period of time. There was only one Saint King in their clan, and they didn't even have a great saint. Apart from Zhong, there were only 2 other medium saints and 4 other small saints. Thus, Zhong Badu had naturally been an extremely important member of the Zhong clan. Moreover, he had possessed the potential to easily become a saint, and even the potential to perhaps become a Saint King. Now, however, he had died at the hands of Ling Han. Ling Han had to die. Not only him, but those close to Ling Han all had to die. If he didn't massacre these people and form a sea of blood, how could he prove the might of the Open Clouds Forbidden Land? However, there was a great saint here, so he wouldn't target the other people just yet. He would only suppress and capture Ling Han this time, and take him back to the open clouds' forbidden land to perform a blood sacrifice. The open clouds king would then personally come here to exterminate all life on this planet. The might of forbidden lands couldn't be challenged. Those who dared to challenge it would invite a massacre and an extermination of all life. Ling Han nodded, and said, "I feel much more at ease after hearing what you had to say. My favorite thing to do is trample over evil villains like you. The feeling of exterminating evil for the people is so incredibly satisfying." Zhong couldn't help but chuckle coldly, and said, "Young man, you think that I don't dare to target you just because you have a great saint beside you?" He thought that Ling Han's confidence came from the Star Sand Saint, and he couldn't help but sneer in disdain. Did the Star Sand Saint dare to challenge him? He swept his gaze over the surroundings, and his pupils involuntarily contracted again. There were 2 female saints. Gasp! They're so beautiful. He only glanced at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden for a moment before shifting his gaze to the Empress. His heartbeat involuntarily quickened. She was stunningly beautiful. As a saint, he should have remained composed even if the heavens were to collapse before him. However, his heart was thumping against his chest at this moment, and it was as if he had seen his first love, and as if he were making love with a woman for the first time. His Tao heart was non-existent at this moment, and all that remained was his carnal desire. He wanted this woman. "She's your woman?" Zhong asked as he pointed at the Empress. "She's my wife. Don't have any improper thoughts. That will only lead to a quicker death," Ling Han said calmly. Ha ha ha. Zhong naturally wouldn't pay any heed to this threat. After all, this woman was only a small saint. Even 1,000 small saints wouldn't be enough to rival a single medium saint. He would be able to suppress all of them with a casual flip of his hands. "I've come," the large black dog exclaimed as he suddenly appeared at the scene. There was a child of around 4 to 5 years old beside him, and there was also a rabbit and a ginseng. The rabbit had ruby-red eyes and was half a human tall, while the ginseng was as thick as a human arm, possessed the ability to walk, and also had facial features. This was the famous group of 4 troublemakers of the Martial Arts Academy. Just the mention of their names was enough to instill fear in one's mind. "Oi, ugly ghost, why are you seeking my subordinate?" the large black dog asked as he stood up on his hind legs. At the same time, he used his paws to scratch his behind, causing a piercing screeching noise as his claws raked against his iron underwear. This sound was horrible enough to make one vomit blood. However, the large black dog was completely unfazed by this, and he even raised his paw to his nose for a sniff. There was a look of intoxication on his face. Zhong couldn't help but grimace. The open clouds' forbidden land was extremely secluded, and thus he hadn't seen many other saints before, especially debauched ones like the large black dog. His entire outlook on the world was about to be warped. "Piss off," the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire shouted as he kicked the large black dog aside. However, he also appeared like a hooligan as he said, "This brat is under my protection. What do you want?" Zhong grimaced again. Such a young saint? This person had definitely used his divine sense to possess another person. However, possessing others would cause one's cultivation to suffer 2 limitations, one due to the divine sense and one due to the physical body. This was according to the principle of Liebig's barrel, where the shortest stave would decide the final capacity of the barrel. Otherwise, how could there be such a young saint? Just what kind of concept would that be? Even if he had started cultivating in his mother's tummy, how many years would that have added up to? Were the people here all freaks? One had killed a saint as an eternal river tier cultivator, one had reached the saint tier as a 4 to 5-year-old child, and one was an unbelievably detestable dog saint. Woof! Stinky brat, Grandpa Dog is going to bite your bum into 3 pieces, the large black dog exclaimed as he charged into battle against the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire. Both the child and the dog were extraordinary beings. This went without saying for the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire. He had been an immortal palace tier elite before, and he was skilled in both the regulation of thunder and regulation of fire. His experience was far superior to that of saints, and it was only due to the limit of his cultivation level that he could only unleash a battle prowess equal to that of medium saints. The large black dog was even more peculiar than him, possessing an unbelievably powerful physique that even medium saints couldn't wound. Right now, he was snapping his jaws at the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire's bum. Zhong instantly felt like vomiting blood upon seeing this. This was far too terrifying. Those two were clearly small saints, yet they both possessed the battle prowess of medium saints. In other words, they could easily battle against him head-on. Perhaps he had cultivated in the Forbidden Land for too long, and the outside world had already changed beyond his recognition. However, he forcefully composed himself. This doesn't matter. No matter what, they only possess battle prowess of medium saints. The Open Clouds Forbidden Land has a Saint King, so mere medium saints won't be of any consequence. Ignorant fool. Zhong said with a sneer. He turned his gaze back to Ling Han, saying, "Evil brat, are you not going to kneel and accept your punishment? Are you forgetting about my presence?" the Star Sand Saint asked. He was unable to hold back his frustration any longer. He was a great saint, yet he was actually being ignored by this person. "Unless you want to provoke the ancestor of my clan, I suggest you remain quiet and obediently stand aside." Zhong didn't give him any face at all. As a member of a forbidden land, did he need to show any respect to other saints? The Star Sand Saint boiled with rage. He humphed, and said, "Don't use the Saint King to threaten me. You think we don't have any Saint Kings behind us?" A few years ago, numerous forbidden lands had formed an alliance with Ling Han. Meanwhile, the representative of Ling Han was none other than the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. As powerful as the Open Clouds Forbidden Land was, could they become enemies with so many forbidden lands at once? It seems that you're becoming more and more senile. You actually dare to become enemies with my Zhong clan? Zhong couldn't help but sneer in reply. The Open Clouds Forbidden Land was far too secluded, so how could they have heard about Ling Han's stunning feat of slaying 2 Saint Kings before? In his eyes, the Star Sand Saint was merely making things up to frighten him. The Star Sand Saint felt a strong urge to smack him to death. However, their alliance with the numerous forbidden lands didn't mean that he could wantonly attack anyone that he wanted. The other forbidden lands would only support him if he were in the right. After all, he wasn't Ling Han. The Star Sand Saint was shaking with fury, yet he still forcefully composed himself. He flicked his sleeves, and roared, "Scram! Hand the evil brat over and I'll naturally take my leave." Zhong said haughtily. He would capture Ling Han this time, and the Open Clouds King would personally come to exterminate all life on this planet the next time. There was an icy look in the Star Sand Saint's eyes as he suddenly leaped before Zhong. Was he forcing him to kill a saint? "Move aside." There was a soft shout as the Empress gracefully strode over. She appeared mesmerizing as she walked, yet she radiated with a profound and domineering aura at the same time. Chapter 1626, Strategy. The Empress walked beside the Star Sand Saint. "Pa!" She raised her slender hand and pushed the great saint aside. She was far too powerful right now, and the Star Sand Saint was already no match for her. However, Zhong merely thought that the Star Sand Saint had gone weak in the knees upon seeing such a stunning beauty. He couldn't help but chuckle coldly. "Are you bringing yourself to me? No worries. Then I'll take you away as well after I suppress you." If small saints wanted to flee, medium saints most likely wouldn't be able to catch up to them. However, if a small saint insisted on fighting, would a medium saint not be able to suppress and capture them? "You dare to slander my husband?" the Empress asked with a haughty expression. Who do you think you are? The Empress was far too beautiful and charming, so much so that even her expression of anger was attractive and mesmerizing. Although Zhong Yi was being pointed at and scolded, he couldn't bring himself to feel angry at all. Instead, he felt an urge to kneel down and lick the Empress' toes. However, he immediately shuddered as this thought flashed across his mind. He was a saint, so how could his will be shaken so easily? The beauty of this woman was far too astonishing. He didn't answer her question. Instead, he ferociously lashed out with a palm, aiming to capture the Empress. Impudence, the Empress shouted softly as she also replied with a palm strike of her own. Boom! A burst of sword light erupted from her slender hand and soared into the sky. Pooh! Zhong Yi was instantly sliced into two halves, from his left shoulder all the way down to his right side's ribs. Blood spurted into the air like a fountain as his upper body slowly slid away from his lower body. There was a look of astonishment on his face, and it was clear that he still hadn't comprehended what had just happened. How is she so powerful? He was a medium saint, yet he couldn't even withstand a single strike of hers. He hurriedly channeled his origin power and life force to stabilize the two halves of his body and contain his vitality. However, the Empress' sword strike contained a devastating destructive ability that continued to erase his vitality even as he attempted to resist it by combusting his life force. Zhong Yi was absolutely petrified. If he had been a normal person, he would have definitely died after being cut into two. However, this was no big deal for saints. They could fully recover from such wounds in no time as long as they could reattach their body and channel origin power for a while. However, what was occurring right now was completely beyond his expectations. There was a frightening murderous aura surging through his body, and this aura possessed a destructive ability that far surpassed his ability to recover. If this continued, both his body and soul would be completely destroyed. Zhong Yi was overcome by horror. At the same time, his feeling of superiority as a member of the Forbidden Lands also vanished without a trace. His divine sense hurriedly left his body. He couldn't remain in his body any longer. If he did, even his divine sense would be obliterated alongside his body. However, as long as his divine sense survived, he could possess another being and live on. When his divine sense left his body, however, he saw the stunningly beautiful Empress who had aroused his lust stare at him with a murderous expression. She swung her slender hand again. Pa! His divine sense was mercilessly destroyed. Blood rain instantly started to pour from the sky as heaven and earth expressed their grief at the death of a saint. He had died an unfortunate death. If a saint wanted to flee, they would have a huge chance of succeeding. However, who told him to underestimate the Empress so greatly? Not only that, but he had even dared to think about capturing the Empress and taking her as his concubine. Thus, he naturally had to suffer the consequences of his foolish actions. The Star Sand Saint and the others all wore strange expressions. Sure enough, birds of a feather flocked together. Ling Han had killed saints in the past, and now it was the Empress' turn to kill saints. It was as if saints were nothing more than trash in their eyes. Anyhow, the Empress' resoluteness in killing Zhong Yi signified that she still had trump cards to rely on. That was, Ling Han could unleash his might and obtain the ability to kill Saint Kings again. Then they had nothing to worry about. There was a smile on Ling Han's face, yet he was actually baring his teeth in his mind. The next person to visit would definitely be the Open Clouds King. However, he didn't have any more power boosts from the Black Tower. How would he deal with the Open Clouds King? Fortunately, even if there were threads of fate here that allowed the Open Clouds King to immediately learn of Zhong Ye's death, it would still take him a long time to arrive. After all, even Zhong Yi had taken 4 to 5 years to get here. This suggested that the Open Clouds Forbidden Land was extremely far away from here. He still had 4 to 5 years to spare. Ling Han rubbed his chin in thought. If he were to seek help from the Saint Kings of the other Forbidden Lands, he would essentially be admitting that he didn't have any more trump cards that enabled him to kill Saint Kings. Some Forbidden Lands wouldn't change their attitude, but other ones. Heh. Actually, I can do this. I'll host another treasure exchange meeting in 4 years' time and invite all of those Saint Kings over. In fact, I can use discussing Tao as a reason to keep them there for a good 8 to 10 years. If the Open Clouds King comes at that time, those Saint Kings will naturally step forward to defend me. Nice, I'll do just that. There were many descendants of the Forbidden Lands in the Martial Arts Academy, and Ling Han could easily send his invitations through them. He would invite the Saint Kings to gather on Wood Figure Planet in 4 years' time. Meanwhile, Ling Han also started to earnestly cultivate. After all, inviting those Saint Kings over was only to hold down the fort. However, the only thing that he could truly rely on was his own strength. Becoming a Saint King in 4 years was obviously not possible. However, reaching the Saint tier most likely wouldn't pose any challenges. The Empress was a good example of this. As long as he reached the Saint tier, his strength would definitely rise explosively. At that time, rivaling great saints wouldn't be difficult. Even if he couldn't defeat the Open Clouds King, he would still at least be able to flee. Moreover, the Open Clouds King wouldn't dare to touch the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. Otherwise, the Open Clouds Forbidden Land would also suffer great losses if Ling Han decided to frenziedly exact revenge on them. Of course, that was unless the members of the Zhong clan all decided to never leave their Forbidden Land, and the Open Clouds King also stood guard there forever. After reaching a certain level, one would also need to abide by certain rules. One shouldn't sweep the families of others into their conflicts. Ling Han's invitations and the news of Zhong Ye's death started to arrive at the numerous Forbidden Lands. Apart from sighing in emotion at Ling Han's explosive temper, the Saint Kings also became more certain that he still possessed a trump card that allowed him to obtain the power of Saint Kings. Otherwise, how would he dare to kill Zhong Yi? Meanwhile, Ling Han and the others were all diligently cultivating in the Black Tower. Their cultivation and strength were all rising rapidly. In reality, they could open the gates to the celestial realm once the Empress became a great saint. A countdown had already started to the day that they could finally enter the celestial realm. A year and a half passed, and Ling Han had already formed 8 million heavenly bodies. 3 years later, his amount of heavenly bodies numbered 99,999 million. Like with the Empress, his rapid speed of advance finally came to a stop at this moment. He had come across a genuine barrier. At this moment, he didn't even have time to make love with the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden anymore. He spent all his time comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree. However, he was forcefully dragged away by the Empress and reverse dominated again. He could cultivate, but he couldn't forget to feed his wives. This time, Ling Han cultivated in seclusion for an entire 6 months. Only then did he form his final heavenly body. 10 million heavenly bodies, the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. He went into seclusion again. Half a year flashed by, and the elites of the numerous Forbidden Lands had already started to gradually arrive. They had received Ling Han's invitation, and were here to attend the treasure exchange and Tao discussion gathering. Ling Han concluded his seclusion. He was already on the doorstep of the Genesis tier, and he was confident that he could advance to this level not long in the future. He called the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire over, and asked him to impart Tao to the Saint Kings to buy some time. This was because the Open Clouds King could theoretically arrive at any time. He might arrive now, or he might arrive in 1 year, or even 10 years. However, he believed that it wouldn't be too long. After all, 2 saints had been killed, so how could he endure this provocation? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire ascended the stage, and this naturally stunned all of the Saint Kings. This child under 10 was going to lecture them on Tao? However, they immediately discovered that this child was actually a medium saint at that. When the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire started to speak, the Saint Kings instantly started to listen to him with respect. Each word was a gem, and each phrase was intricately linked with Tao. Chapter 1627, Scared Away. Just what level of elite was the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire? An immortal palace tier. Though his present cultivation level had indeed dropped to the Saint tier in a mere several years, he had already advanced from a small saint to a medium saint. His rate of advancement was chillingly fast. His comprehension of great Tao had not been reduced in the slightest. Just a few words from him, and it was enough to cause tremendous shock among the Saint Kings, and they were all filled with admiration. Age was not a factor in learning. Moreover, the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was only physically young. Heaven knew what kind of old monster that had been living for who knew how many eons he had been before his reincarnation. Ling Han did not enter the Black Tower again. He had a feeling that his breakthrough would be within the next several days. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire lectured on Tao, and the seminar lasted 3 months. However, all the saints felt as if less than a day had passed. All of them were lying in the ocean of great Tao, and felt like they were about to break through at any moment. This naturally was only their illusion. The majority of the Saint Kings had reached the peak stage, and if they wanted to break through, they could only advance into the severing mundane tier, but this step could only be taken in the celestial realm. Whether it was the immortal realm or the netherworld, they both lacked the necessary heaven and earth for that kind of breakthrough. Severing mundane tier meant an unlimited lifespan, but this required the support of indestructible resources, which could only be obtained in the celestial realm. It was only because the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire's Tao was too profound, which made them feel as if they had been enlightened, yet were still confused, which gave them the mistaken feeling of being about to break through. However, the feeling of being about to break through was false, but if they could digest the teachings of Tao from the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, their battle prowess could still be greatly increased. Actually, those who had benefited the most were the Star Sand Saint and the Tranquil Heart Saint as well as the other 9 small saints. As hosts, they naturally could enter and listen from the sidelines. Furthermore, they were still very far from touching the ceiling of their cultivation level, so they naturally benefited greatly. They could not imagine that one of the brats of the 4 troublemakers would actually have such astonishing understanding that even Saint Kings would be completely wrapped up in listening to his words. 3 months later, a golden path spread over. Then, a powerful saintly might diffused into the air, not concealing the frightening animosity and killing intent at all, and seeped uncaringly into Woodfigure Planet. The saintly might of a Saint King. The Saint Kings were all alerted, and couldn't help but look displeased. What a joke. There were presently a few dozen Saint Kings discussing Tao in this place, and added together, they would be able to pierce a hole right in the heavens itself. Just who did you think you were? You actually dared provoke them all at the same time, especially when you were only one person? Humph. The Saint Kings all expressed their might, and unfurled their respective auras, which spread out towards that invader. The Open Clouds King paled in shock. After Zhong had died, he had immediately caught hold of the link of karma. Naturally, he knew the matter of Zhong's death. He flew into a towering rage. There was actually someone in this world that dared make a move on his descendant? He immediately charged out, but the Open Clouds' forbidden land was really too far away from here. This was also the reason for his deliberately establishing his clan in such a far location. He did not want to become neighbors with the other forbidden lands. After all, he was guilty, and feared that he would be ganged up on by the other forbidden lands. After arriving at Woodfigure Planet, he could no longer restrain his killing intent, and immediately released it. He was a great Saint King, so what did he have to be wary of? However, a few dozen powerful auras countered immediately, and there were at least 10 of them that were in no way inferior to himself. He was so shocked that his hair was standing on ends. What in the world was going on? He immediately wanted to break into a run and flee. He instinctively thought that this was a trap, and someone had lured him here to be killed. When he had betrayed the Heavenly River King, he had obtained a portion of the Celestial King technique, and this was a secret that the other Forbidden Lands were unaware of, but he kept it constantly in his mind, fearing that it would be found out by others one day, and he would then become the target of the combined force of the various Forbidden Lands. Only those descendants that had advanced into the Saint tier would be taught this kind of celestial technique in the whole Zhong clan, and they would have restrictions placed on their spirit that would immediately explode if their spirits were forcefully plucked out and searched. It was impossible that this secret would be leaked. And now, he had just arrived, and he discovered that there were several dozen Saint King auras filled with animosity here, which naturally scared him less. Schwa, he really had to turn and flee. All the Saint Kings were dumbfounded. What the heck were you doing? You had come so aggressively, yet in the blink of an eye, you were so cowardly that you didn't even dare to show your face. What exactly did you mean here? Was that the old geezer Zhong from the Open Clouds Forbidden Land? One Saint King asked. There were only that many Saint Kings in the whole immortal realm, so they were naturally very familiar with each other's auras. He is really as cowardly as he has always been, the Blue Feather Saint King muttered disdainfully. You can't blame him, after all, ho-ho. Another Saint King spoke up, yet suddenly stopped what he had been about to say. But the other Saint Kings all understood his implied meaning. Previously, the Open Clouds Forbidden Land had belonged under the banner of the Heavenly River King, yet the Heavenly River King had been betrayed by the Open Clouds King, resulting in him becoming the target of the combined force of a great many Forbidden Lands. Yet the Celestial King technique had still not appeared even until now, so the Open Clouds King naturally worried that the other Forbidden Lands would redirect their ire against him. However, he was really overthinking things. Without an absolute relation of interest and benefit, how could war start so easily among Saint Kings? Even if 10 Saint Kings ganged up on one, they possibly would have to pay the price of 1 or 2 of their companions sacrificing themselves to be able to deal with this Saint King. A Saint King who was fighting with his life on the line was just that terrifying. What person that had been able to cultivate to the height of Saint King in the ancient realm was not an extraordinarily talented prodigy, so who could claim that any other was weaker than himself? He's come to get revenge, right? But when he sensed that so many Saint Kings have gathered here, he was immediately scared off, a Saint King deduced with a strange expression. All the Saint Kings involuntarily laughed. This was really quite coincidental. Old geezer Zhong had come so aggressively to seek revenge, coincidentally encountered so many Saint Kings coming to participate in the prosperous event of a Dao seminar and treasure exchange, and was directly scared into retreating. These Saint Kings all paused slightly. There was nothing so coincidental that could happen in this world, and it could only result from deliberate planning. Why had Ling Han gathered them here at this time? Could it be that this boy no longer had the means to kill a Saint King? Thus, after Zhong Yi died, he had purposely provoked them into coming so that they could help block this calamity for him? It was possible. All of the Saint Kings were all wily foxes, and already had their own guesses in their hearts. However, their expressions did not reveal their thoughts, and they continued to participate in the Dao seminar. Yet some of them were already making their own plans in their minds. Perhaps this was an opportunity. Ling Han swept an eye over them, and saw the slight change in expressions of the Saint Kings. He smiled, and said, "Everyone, there is one other matter I have invited all of you over for, and that is to witness my becoming a saint." He suddenly released the suppression over his aura. All of a sudden, a powerful but unstable aura spread out. Immediately, thunderclouds rolled out in the skies. The heavenly tribulation was swiftly brewing. What, this Brat was about to become a saint? All the Saint Kings were astonished. A few years ago, when they had seen Ling Han, this guy was only in the high extreme of the eternal river tier, yet just how long had passed, and he was actually about to become a saint. This. After becoming a saint, even if Ling Han no longer had the means to kill a saint king, he would possess enough strength to ensure his own safety. If a small saint was determined to flee, a saint king could not possibly catch up. Some saint kings were immediately about to set their ideas into motion. Should they take this last chance to kill Ling Han? This world was especially realistic. Though the Forbidden Lands treated Ling Han politely, and aside from the limited few saint kings that truly thought of working together with him, the majority of them had only befriended Ling Han and maintained good relations with him because he had killed 2 saint kings. Once Ling Han had lost that kind of strength, then he was a cash cow that possessed an astonishingly huge secret in their eyes. Suddenly, 7 saint kings revealed a menacing killing intent, restless and about to attack. Chapter 1628, An Ultra-Tribulation. Ling Han took a step forwards, and had entered into the galaxy. He could not endure the heavenly tribulation on Wood Figure Planet, or the whole planet would be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. Once he had entered into the galaxy, Ling Han sensed an incredibly powerful aura. A saint king. It was the Open Clouds King. He had not gone too far, but was spying on him from nearby instead. Damn Brat! Once the Open Clouds King spotted Ling Han, he immediately flew into a thunderous rage. He, too, had a link of karma on him. Zhong Badu had died at the hand of this boy. Had he come out to surrender to death? Crack! But the Open Clouds King had not yet made his move when he saw the dense thunderclouds. A bolt of lightning had already struck, taking the form of a lightning giant that began its attack towards Ling Han. He suddenly stopped. With his strength, he naturally could tell clearly that Ling Han was undergoing the heavenly tribulation for a saint. Furthermore, he was breaking through from the Eternal River tier to the Genesis tier. But the problem here was the commotion was too great. It was approaching, the heavenly tribulation for a great saint. How was this possible? The tribulation for a small saint was actually equal to the tribulation of a great saint. Just what kind of freak was this? The Open Clouds King dared not make a move now. If he was to attack Ling Han at this moment, he would definitely be dragged into the heavenly tribulation, and the Saint King tribulation that would be expanded on that basis. The Open Clouds King dared not even imagine just how terrifying it would be. However, there was one thing he could confirm, and that it was enough to kill him. For the sake of killing a small saint, he would have to bury himself along with him. This was something that only an idiot would do. Furthermore, he did not believe that Ling Han was capable of surviving this kind of heavenly tribulation. What small saint was so awesome in this world that he possessed the strength matching a great saint's? Wang. Multiple golden pathways spread across the galaxy. The Saint Kings of the various Forbidden Lands had also appeared, gathering to watch Ling Han endure the heavenly tribulation. Old geezer Zhong, a Saint King, greeted the Open Clouds King. The Open Clouds King's expression was guarded as he nodded at the other. However, he immediately communicated a message that allowed him to instantly grasp a considerable amount of information through his divine sense. Ling Han had killed saints before, and it was not just one. There were even 2 Saint Kings among them. According to the news that had come from the Netherworld side, Ling Han had even killed a great many heaven demons. This brat could merge the regulations of the 2 realms, and was thus valued by the many Forbidden Lands. In future, he could possibly become a core to merge the 2 realms into one. Worse come to worst, even if he didn't merge the 2 realms, he could still open the doors to the Celestial Realm, and bring the many Forbidden Lands with him into the Celestial Realm. At first, he was stunned, but then immediately smirked coldly. Ling Han's inviting so many Saint Kings over this time round was obviously meant as a tactic to deal with him. Going along that line of thought, Ling Han should no longer possess the means of killing Saint Kings. Blazing light shone randomly in his eyes, and he was thinking whether he would take a massive risk to make a move when Ling Han had finished enduring the heavenly tribulation, and obtain all his secrets in one go. But the problem was, what if Ling Han had a hidden ace up his sleeve? Maybe everything was only his deliberate scheming, and he actually still had the means to kill Saint Kings. Then that would be terrible. The Open Clouds King was not the only one. A good many Saint Kings were also secretly pondering the chances of this. After all, only if they continued to maintain good relations with Ling Han would they be able to enter into the celestial realm, and they had been able to cultivate to the level of Saint King even in the ancient realm, so after entering into the celestial realm, breaking through to the severing mundane tier would definitely not be difficult for them. A severing mundane ancestor, indestructible through the ages, and having a lifespan that lasted as long as the heavens themselves. On one side, they could possibly become even stronger, and on the other, they could become indestructible celestial beings. It was very difficult to decide between the two. More importantly, what if this was just a trap? Not only would they be unable to become celestial beings, they might even possibly die. They were really in a tough dilemma. However, at least for the moment, no one dared make a move. If anyone dared to interfere in this kind of heavenly tribulation, they would definitely be dead. Ling Han was a little uneasy as well. His present strength was indeed a match for a heavenly tribulation at the level of a great saint, but the problem was that he still had to temper his godly bones. This meant that not only could he not counter, his defenses would also have to sink to rock bottom. He only hesitated slightly, and then firmed his resolve. He was going to gamble. He was in a more desperate need for strength now. Wolves were all eyeing him hungrily around him, and he would only be able to protect himself if he had strong power. Boom! Ling Han shattered his own godly bones to be tempered under the heavenly tribulation. Is he dead? A few people exclaimed, and felt that it was a true pity. Some of them felt pity that there would be no one else able to bring them into the celestial realm after Ling Han's death, while others felt pity that Ling Han's spirit had been destroyed in the heavenly tribulation, and his secrets would also be buried eternally in this heaven and earth with his spirit. However, they immediately discovered that the aura that belonged to Ling Han had not vanished, especially the Open Clouds King. He could easily grasp the link of karma that was connected to Ling Han, which was still connected to the Zhong clan. He didn't die. He is actually tempering his godly bones within the heavenly tribulation. No wonder this Brat's physique is so frightening. So this was how he managed to inscribe so many killing formations in his body. But this is taking risks with his life. A mere small saint facing the tribulation of a great saint is filled with danger in the first place, and he does not defend himself with his full effort. Instead, he injures himself. Is he seeking death? For the sake of strength, this Brat is really putting too much on the line. The Saint Kings were all astonished. Even they would be moved by such firm resolve. The Empress, the heavenly Phoenix Maiden, the large black dog, and the others all arrived in the galaxy. They were filled with confidence in Ling Han. This Brat, he's incredible. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Even he, an elite of the immortal palace tier, was moved. Though he, too, could claim to be a prodigy himself, if his cultivation level dropped to the same level as Ling Han, he would probably be considerably inferior to the latter. Of course, it was all taught by this grandpa dog, the large black dog exclaimed proudly. Shua, the Empress shot out a palm strike that turned into a flash of sword chi, scaring the large black dog into hurriedly dodging. Woman, don't think that you can be reckless just because you are good-looking. If you push me too far, I will still bite you, the large black dog barked. The Empress's battle prowess was too frightening. She had actually torn off a patch of fur from his tail, which caused him much heartache. He had never experienced such a great loss. Yet the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire only stared at Ling Han, and murmured, breaking through with 10 million stars. Even in the celestial realm, there are not many that can accomplish such a feat, at least as far as I know. Only a few male and female saints within the larger sects are capable of it. But in this place, there are actually 2 people that succeeded. To Ling Han, this was a great danger. The heavenly tribulation was too frightening. In a short while, it had increased from the heavenly tribulation of a small saint to the heavenly tribulation of a great saint. This required Ling Han to exert his full effort to be able to stand against such might, but he presently had given up resisting. Instead, he even unraveled his own defenses, and this caused him to suffer greatly. His godly bones were shattered with one blast from the lightning giant. Under the overwhelming power of a great saint, his physique was really inadequate. The godly bones that had been shattered in the first place were directly turned to dust, which was a serious threat to Ling Han's life. If this went on, he would definitely die. Ling Han channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid so that his body would rapidly rebuild itself. This was not tempering his physique, but rather a move to seek death. He began to actively defend himself against the heavenly tribulation. Since the heavenly tribulation was so strong, he actually did not need to shatter his godly bones to be tempered, because the heavenly tribulation was strong enough. Even in a complete condition, he would be able to obtain enough tempering. With a battle cry, he used one celestial technique after another, greeting the barrage of the heavenly tribulation. Why was the heavenly tribulation for himself and the Empress so strong? Logically speaking, it had never been so exaggerated when he had broken through from the pinnacle level to the next major tier in the past. I am strong, because I have exerted enough effort, and the heaven and earth should reward me for it instead of laying on punishment. This should be because he and the Empress had merged the regulations of the 2 realms. Ling Han suddenly had a dawning realization. At the essence of the matter, the ancient realm was divided into 2 worlds, and both repelled the other. Though he had merged the regulations of the 2 realms, and they were complete in his body, the regulations of the netherworld were still treated with animosity by the immortal realm. As the heaven and earth of the immortal realm saw it, it was as if Ling Han himself was an invader from the netherworld, so they naturally would spare no expense to destroy Ling Han. Chapter 1629, The 6th level of the Black Tower opens. Of course, mysteriously and inexorably, the heaven and earth would also be restrained. Otherwise, what was descending now would not be the tribulation of a great saint, but rather the tribulation of a saint king. A great saint that had merged the regulations of the 2 realms would be able to blast open the doors to the celestial realm, and this was presently a tribulation of a great saint, so there seemed to be some kind of link between the 2. Ling Han had an understanding in his heart, but this kind of understanding was of no help to him in enduring the heavenly tribulation. His cries rang out endlessly, and he used celestial techniques casually. At present, though he had yet to finish enduring the heavenly tribulation, he already possessed the strength and comprehension of cultivation level of a small saint. Celestial techniques ultimately showed their powerful might at his hands. However, the lightning giant that the heavenly tribulation had taken form in was immortal and indestructible. It would reform after being destroyed, and its number would only be more, and not decrease in the slightest. Just as what the Empress had experienced, when there were as many as 50 lightning giants, they ultimately underwent a qualitative change. Ling Han could hold on no longer. He spat out blood madly after he suffered a combined strike from them, and his godly bones had also been broken instantly. He was being ganged up on by 50 great saints. What kind of concept was that? In any case, the Star Sand Saint's face was pale. As he saw it, only one that had reached the middle stage of the great saint tier could be able to survive this kind of battle, but at present, he was only in the early stage of the great saint tier. If he were to experience this kind of heavenly tribulation, he would definitely die without a doubt. First there was the Empress, and here was Ling Han. Why was this whole family all so freakish? They were already so strong when they were just small saints. Then, when they eventually became saint kings, would there be anyone that could match them in this world? The Star Sand Saint was not the only one who had that thought. There were also the Saint Kings from the other forbidden lands. All of their expressions were grim. But the Saint Kings who had broader vision did not think this was too serious, because their aim was the celestial realm, and in the celestial realm, no matter how strong a Saint King you were, so what? Cultivation was the true kingly way. Ling Han channeled another drop of indestructible true fluid so that his injuries would be under control. Using them consecutively in a short period of time, the effects of the indestructible true fluid had dropped sharply. With his humph, 4 arms suddenly appeared from his body. The immovable deity metal body mystical power. The name of this celestial technique was a little long, but its might was indeed powerful. In an instant, it had increased Ling Han's battle prowess by a few fold. He wielded the divine demon sword with one hand, while another held the broken wooden sword. One of his hands used the banishing technique, while another channeled the annihilating dragon star arrow. One hand used the flying dragon shadow hands, and the last was using Tide of the Ages. A lightning giant rushed forwards, but suddenly disappeared when Ling Han pressed a hand on it. He pressed out another hand, and another lightning giant immediately crumbled. It was as if it had disappeared from this present world, and had returned to the past. At this time, the godly bones in Ling Han's body were exuding golden light, and there were densely interwoven patterns appearing on his bones. This was his godly bones evolving to a stronger level. He shouted loudly, his fighting spirit blazing. No longer did he simply passively defend, instead, he took the initiative to attack. Pooh! Under the strike from the divine demon sword, even the lightning giants would be sliced in half. They could only completely reform after a considerable number of breaths, which was proof of how powerful its destructive ability was. All the Saint Kings were watching, numb with shock. For those who had reached a height that they had, there was actually not much that could astonish them anymore, but now all of them felt like they had to take some medicine to calm their shock. Too powerful, how could there possibly be a freak like this? A small saint fighting back against a great saint, this was something that had never happened before. Yet they did not know that the Empress had also succeeded accomplishing this kind of feat before this. The Open Clouds King's expression was filled with solemn seriousness. He possessed the bloodline of the bronze dragon, and could clearly sense that there was the power of time on Ling Han. Involuntarily, his heart throbbed. If he could refine Ling Han, then wouldn't he be able to obtain the shards of great Tao of the regulation of time? Directly comprehending the regulation of time of the heaven and earth was much, much too difficult. It could only be done through certain natural treasures, such as the moment flower, time crystal, or refining a person that had similarly cultivated the power of time, extracting a shard of the regulations of time from the other. Actually, in the celestial realm, this was also a path that the majority of elites chose to take. After all, there were too few natural treasures, and refining those that cultivated the same path was equivalent to gathering a little at a time to accumulate more, using their blood and bones to pave a path that led to becoming a supreme celestial king. In the eyes of the Open Clouds King, Ling Han was no longer a person, but rather a resource for cultivation. Ling Han became mad as he battled. The indestructible heaven scroll circulated in his body, and golden light exuded from his whole body. Endless seals appeared, and even an immortal palace tier elite like the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire was completely incapable of studying them. He could only watch with wide eyes. This is. Yet the large black dog was excited, and continuously ran up and down. His eyeballs were about to pop out of his head, as he madly slapped his head. Why can't I remember? They are clearly so incredibly familiar to me. No one noticed that multiple golden seals were also flickering on the large black dog. They were actually slightly similar to Ling Han's, but the large black dog himself didn't notice, either. He was presently freaking out to the extreme. The godly bones cracked and popped loudly. The might of this heavenly tribulation was really too strong. Even if Ling Han did not shatter his own godly bones anymore, the tempering effects that he was receiving had not been weakened in the slightest. His godly bones had officially advanced to the height of level 18 godly metal, and they were still continuing to improve further. As his defenses improved, Ling Han also became more and more relaxed. One after another, celestial techniques were used in his hands with increasing proficiency, and their might was also gradually stronger. The Black Tower's 6th level has been opened. Small Tower's voice rang out in Ling Han's mind. The 5 levels before corresponded to the 5 elements, and the 6th floor corresponded to lightning. Boom! Within the Black Tower, purple divine lightning appeared, barraging the fields of godly medicines. This was very destructive, and 99% of the godly medicines instantly died, but there was also very limited few godly medicines that survived, and their quality had advanced to a new level. 1 among 10,000, the best of the best. The reincarnation tree had also suffered great damage. Half of its trunk had been struck down, and its vitality had practically been destroyed. Its leaves had all withered and fell. There was only a bit of vitality preserved in its core. This celestial tree had been grown through acceleration from the Black Tower, and resorting to an accelerated process for the sake of momentary success, it would never possibly become a true reincarnation tree. However, it was using its death to trade for a new life under the power of the purple lightning. If it could survive this tribulation, it would be able to start back from the beginning, and grow to become a true reincarnation tree. The hope of life was contained in its death. Ling Han's divine sense swept over, and understood all that had happened inside the Black Tower. He couldn't help but feel an enlightenment. The lightning tribulation was clearly violent, and filled with killing intent, yet there was thriving vitality contained within this killing intent. He raised his head to look at the thunderclouds. In the past, people could only passively endure the heavenly tribulation, and had no one ever thought to enter into the depths of the tribulation clouds to see what was hidden within? The end of death was life, so what was hidden behind this lightning tribulation that was filled with destruction? When this thought rose in him, Ling Han could no longer restrain himself. With a battle cry, he flew towards the thunderclouds. He's fucking crazy. All the Saint Kings paled in shock when they saw this. Had no one ever thought of entering into the depths of the thunderclouds to see what was there? This was wrong. There had been a great many elites that had once had this thought, but all those who had thought this, and dared to put their thought into action had all died. Throughout the ages, it was unknown how many elites had perished because of this, and there was naturally no one that dared to do such a thing in future. This was a direct path to death. Yet Ling Han actually took this step. Chapter 1630, Depths of the Thunderclouds. Ling Han charged towards the thunderclouds. Boom! 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 There had been 50 lightning giants in the first place, and the heavenly tribulation only maintained that kind of intensity, and did not become any stronger than that. However, as Ling Han approached, it seemed as if the heaven and earth had been angered. Boom! Another bolt of lightning blasted out, forming a new lightning giant. It was not just one, either. Boom! 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 The number of lightning giants became more and more. Some were brandishing spears of lightning, some were wielding swords of lightning, and some were directly using their fists, shooting out blazing bolts of lightning. Ling Han was unafraid. The terrifying power of lightning was circulating in the Black Tower, so he, too, seemed to have fused with the lightning element regulations, and had become assimilated with it. Each bolt of lightning shot at him, yet did not manage to harm him in the slightest. The present Ling Han was equivalent to the embodiment of the regulations of lightning, yet also seemed superior to it. That was because the regulations inside the Black Tower were clearly superior to the regulations of the immortal realm. How is this possible? All the Saint Kings cried out in shock. Even if Ling Han could be so powerful to be able to destroy all those lightning giants, they would not have been so stunned, but this scene was really too shocking. This was a heavenly tribulation, whom would it give face to? Yet Ling Han had just so directly charged into the innermost depths of the heavenly tribulation, challenging the authority of heaven and earth. Boom, boom, boom. The heavenly tribulation became increasingly violent. This was the might of the heaven and earth, and would not allow anyone to challenge its authority. The number of lightning giants continued to increase, and had reached as many as 300. By this time, even the Saint Kings were terrified. Even if it was them who were facing over 300 great saints, they would be frowning, and only those peak stage Saint Kings could really be unafraid. But if it was them, the might of the heavenly tribulation would be even stronger, and become countless peak stage Saint Kings ganging up on them. Ling Han forged on bravely. Perhaps he would only have this one chance. This was the first time the Black Tower had opened the 6th level, and a large volume of lightning element regulations had surged in, which allowed him to temporarily ignore the heavenly tribulation, but in future, this would definitely not happen a second time. He charged into the thunderclouds. It was complete darkness. If it was not due to the fact that there were still blazing bolts of lightning flashing within, he would practically suspect that he had once again entered into some kind of dangerous place, and all his senses were sealed. Ling Han advanced continuously forwards, and the strength of the lightning giants was also frighteningly increasing. No longer were mere numbers used to suppress him, but superiority in cultivation level was also brought into play. A Saint King level lightning giant had appeared. If he did not have the help of the Black Tower, no matter how freakish Ling Han was, he would not be able to match this kind of opponent, but at present, he could directly ignore it. No matter how madly it blasted at him, so what? He just simply advanced ahead, completely at ease. In the outside world, not one person could see what was happening in the thunderclouds. They only knew that since the thunderclouds had not dissipated, it meant that Ling Han was not dead. Ling Han quickened his steps. Half a day's time had already passed a very long time ago, he had to hurry. The place ahead of him suddenly cleared up. Ling Han was so stunned that he stopped his advance. There was actually a sacrificial altar in the innermost depths of the thunderclouds. Could it be that the heavenly tribulation was a man-made entity? He went closer, yet shook his head continuously. This sacrificial altar did not seem to have been built by human hands, but was rather formed naturally. Mysteriously, there was a force that had molded it into this form. Perhaps, all the sacrificial altars in the world were also molded into their forms under the influence of this. The sacrificial altar was very simple, and was only 3 meters tall. The material it was made of was indistinguishable, and in its center, there was a recess. There was a liquid splashing visibly in it, exuding a refreshing fragrance that could not be described. That is the heavenly tribulation fluid, Small Tower explained. You're rich, Brat. The Black Tower has opened the 6th level, which allowed you to temporarily develop resonance with the great Tao of lightning, and thus you were able to barge into this place. Otherwise, you would only be capable of obtaining the heavenly tribulation fluid of this realm when you became a Saint King. Ling Han nodded. The ancient realm had the restrictions of the ancient realm. The strongest power in this realm was Saint King. Thus, when he became a Saint King, with his strength, he would naturally be able to sweep aside all other Saint Kings, and would similarly be able to barge into the depths of the thunderclouds. However, this was only limited to the ancient realm. If he broke through to Saint King tier in the celestial realm, that was a different story. What benefits does the heavenly tribulation fluid have? Ling Han asked. It can help you comprehend the great Tao of lightning, Small Tower answered. Doesn't the Black Tower contain lightning element regulations? Ling Han asked curiously. That is different. That had been brought in through the heavenly venerable tier gathering the regulations of the celestial realm, and even I am only able to use it. If you want to attain comprehension through it, it would be no different from directly touching the regulations of lightning of the celestial realm, and would not provide any increase to its effects, Small Tower explained. Perhaps, now with another level of the Black Tower opening, its mood had also become considerably better. It actually did not act tsundere even after so much time had passed. Realization dawned on Ling Han, and he walked quickly towards the sacrificial altar. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. Multiple lightning giants appeared, and the last had even reached the peak stage of Saint King tier, wanting to kill Ling Han. Hello, Heavenly Tribulation, goodbye, Heavenly Tribulation. Ling Han joked, passing through them. Like no technique could touch him, the attacks of the lightning giants did not have the slightest effect on him. He arrived at the side of the sacrificial altar, and hurriedly took out the heavenly tribulation fluid within the recess, putting it away into the Black Tower. This was too valuable. He would only get 2 such chances in this lifetime. He would get another chance upon becoming a Saint King in the ancient realm. His defenses were too strong. In future, when he became a celestial king of the 9 heavens, he similarly could be invincible and obtain the heavenly tribulation fluid another time. But by that time, would he still need the heavenly tribulation fluid? There was not much heavenly tribulation fluid, only about a liter. It was gleaming blue like the waters of an ocean, exuding an unusual fragrance that was refreshing to the heart and spirit. There were patterns of great Tao rolling about visibly within, as if it contained all the heavens eternally. Ling Han did not look too long at it. He could slowly study it in future. He stared at the sacrificial altar. There were similarly countless patterns of great Tao on it. They had to be linked to the formation of the heavenly tribulation. If he could comprehend them, then wouldn't he be able to grasp the power of divine punishment? He studied them very closely, but not too long later, this sacrificial altar mysteriously vanished. The thunderclouds around him had also disappeared without a trace. Ling Han realized that he had reappeared in the galaxy. Half a day's time had passed, and the heavenly tribulation had dissipated. Too bad. Ling Han couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. If he was given enough time, he would be able to copy down the patterns of great Tao on the sacrificial altar. Even if he couldn't understand them for the moment, it was fine. He would be able to slowly study them in future. Ling Han, what did you discover in the thunderclouds? All the Saint Kings gathered around him. They were all very curious. Some of them were excited to the point that they couldn't even speak coherently. Entering into the depths of the thunderclouds was something that had never been successfully done before. It was naturally impossible for Ling Han to tell the truth. They were only allies, he could not possibly allow these people to know the secret of the heavenly tribulation fluid. Only even more heavenly tribulation, he said. Though the Saint Kings did not believe him, they could do nothing. Ling Han had already said thus, and if they pressed the question, they would have to take the risk of becoming hostile with Ling Han. Who knew if he still had trump cards in his hands? Even if he didn't, as long as they could not definitely kill him, wouldn't it be an easy task for a small saint to flee? Furthermore, once this kind of freak had advanced into medium saint, and great saint, he would be able to easily kill Saint Kings even with his own strength. Thus, without the confidence that they would be able to kill him with a single strike, who would want to start a war with Ling Han? Chapter 1631, Ambush. In the distance, the open clouds king left on the golden path with a flutter of his sleeve. He naturally would not be letting the matter go just like this, but this was not a good time to make a move. Then, what was the point of him continuing to stay here? Becoming a joke? Ling Han's left hand held the Empress's hand, while his right-hand arm was wrapped around the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. He took a step forwards, and the golden path unfurled. He had already returned to Woodfigure Planet. Congratulations, friend Ling. All the Saint Kings expressed their congratulations with clasped hands. As for how many of them were truly sincere, that was something that only they themselves knew. Though Ling Han was only a small saint, judging from the heavenly tribulation that he had undergone, it was clear that he possessed the battle prowess of a great saint. His battle prowess had even reached the middle stage or late stage of the great saint tier. He was overwhelmingly strong. Once this guy became a medium saint, wouldn't he be a qualified match for a saint king? Added with the fact that Ling Han had already killed saint kings before, the saint kings would naturally not dare to underestimate him in the slightest. They treated him completely like he was their equal. Ling Han thanked all the saints, and smilingly said, "I have prepared some fine dishes and excellent wine. Please come and have a taste, everyone." Though a large part of the godly medicines in the Black Tower had been destroyed, those that remained had been baptized by the purple lightning, and their effects were multiplied 100-fold. Using them as cooking ingredients was naturally excellent. Ling Han also added some reincarnation tree leaves that had not been turned into ashes. This could completely be considered a saintly medicine if one was talking in simple terms of comprehension. The saints were naturally pleased. Even they could only think of having such a lavish feast, they definitely could not bear to put out such luxurious dishes. Yet Ling Han did not feel the slightest pity. When the reincarnation tree sprouted and grew leaves again, its effects would definitely be improved greatly. As for these, they would only be disposed of if he didn't use them. After the celebratory feast, it was time for the treasure exchange. However, the last treasure exchange had been more than a dozen years ago, so how could they produce so many treasures in such a short period of time? The saints' hearts were naturally not focused on this event. Ling Han had already become a saint king, and the time of entry into the celestial realm was getting closer and closer. They had to confirm that he really would bring them and their clans into the celestial realm, and those with ambitions were thinking of when would be a proper time to make their move. Otherwise, when Ling Han had become a medium saint or a great saint, even saint kings would not be able to suppress him. Even if the Tao seminar had concluded, these saints did not leave, providing various reasons for their extended stay. The ambience was a little strange. Even an idiot could feel the strangeness in the atmosphere. Perhaps there was presently a violent storm brewing. Yet Ling Han did not care, and simply focused on stabilizing his cultivation level. Unfortunately, the reincarnation tree was temporarily unusable, and he could only slowly accumulate his comprehension of cultivation level with time. This caused his comprehension of cultivation level to improve very slowly, and it was unable to catch up to his origin power level that was already at the level of a small saint even after much time had passed. There was nothing that could be done. He had already reached this level. If he could advance one step forward in 10,000 years, that would be considered quite fast. He could not ask for too much. Thankfully, Small Tower had already said that the reincarnation tree would definitely recover in 2 years at most, and the effects would be greatly improved this time round. It would be a piece of cake for one day to be equivalent to 100 years. And because of this, Ling Han did not use the heavenly tribulation fluid. It was best to be able to comprehend Tao underneath the reincarnation tree after consuming it. Otherwise, it would be a major waste. He did not have to rush in these 2 years. On Wood Figure Planet, a storm was brewing in the dark. There were already a few saint kings that were restless. With every passing day, Ling Han would become a little bit stronger, and once his power reached a critical point, even saint kings would not be able to do anything to him. All the saint kings were sure that Ling Han had definitely obtained the inheritance of a celestial king. Otherwise, it was definitely impossible for him to be so strong. Under the influence of such greed, a few saint kings were presently brewing a storm. The situation is not too good. On this day, Ling Han had gathered the Empress, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, the Rain Emperor, Su Ran, Ding Ping, and the others together. All the saint kings already have their suspicions, and I have lost the trump card to kill saint kings. Dark waves are rippling in secret, and the storm could explode at any moment. The Rain Emperor nodded. He had already formed over 9 million stars, and was close to the bottleneck point. He gruffly said, "We had best hide for a while. There is no need to get momentary satisfaction now." He was an absolute supporter of war. His assertiveness was no less than the Empress, but he was definitely not a foolishly brave person. With their present strength, they were indeed far from being a match for the Saint Kings. If they went into a head-on clash, it would definitely mean their demise. There was no need for a fight to the death. Su Ran and the notionless saint also nodded in agreement. Those who would make major accomplishments should not bother with the details. This was a strategic retreat, there was nothing to be ashamed of. Ling Han paused slightly, and then continued, "I want to use this opportunity to see who among them has malicious intentions. This kind of people. I will definitely not bring them into the celestial realm." Everyone knew that Ling Han valued relations. He had never gone back on his word once he agreed to something. When he agreed to become a core to merge the two realms, if this process was too slow, he would directly blast open the doors into the celestial realm, and bring everyone with him into the celestial realm. However, if someone had the intention to bring him harm while taking advantage of him to enter into the celestial realm at the same time, that was something that Ling Han would not allow to happen. They all made their respective preparations. It was time for them to leave Wood Figure Planet. 2 days later, the Blue Feather Saint paid him a visit. He suggested to Ling Han that now that Ling Han had become a saint, he should make an attempt at becoming a core, and merge the two realms. Ling Han considered for a moment, and then agreed to the other's request. In the first place, he had wanted to see how many people were having designs on him. Since the Blue Feather Saint had brought up such a request, he would go with the flow and give others a chance so that these scheming people would be revealed. The Rain Emperor and the others were naturally long since prepared, and they all entered into the Black Tower. As for the large black dogs group of 4 despicable characters, they had completely no intention of leaving. They only told Ling Han to come find them when he was ready to enter into the celestial realm. Ling Han rode a golden path, and headed towards Cloud Apex Planet. This was the two-realm battlefield that was closest to him. Now that he was a saint, there was naturally no need to use the cloud-piercing shuttle any longer. The golden path unfurled, and his speed was overwhelming. In an instant, he had left multiple stars behind him. It was just like how he had arrived through opening the sky of the lower realm in the past, circulated by the heaven and earth. The speed was also as fast as this. The speed of a saint was the fastest speed in the immortal realm. However, 3 golden paths actually shot over ahead of him all of a sudden. Though they did not collide with Ling Han, it could be clearly seen that along with these 3 golden paths, there were also 3 gigantic attacks. This was Saint King tier battle prowess, which had sealed Ling Han's course, and at this moment, above him, below him, on his left, on his right, and behind him, 3 attacks shot over, and they were similarly of Saint King level. Ling Han actually encountered the attacks of 18 Saint Kings at the same time, which had sealed all possibility of him going ahead, going backwards, or dodging in any direction. What to do now? Ling Han smiled calmly. He knew that he would be ambushed on the journey because he had already clearly expressed his intention to go to Cloud Apex Planet long ago. With a thought, he disappeared, and entered into the Black Tower. Pung, 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 pung. As he disappeared, the 18 Saint King attacks suddenly crashed into each other, forming a terrifying storm in the universe. Thankfully, there were no planets in the surrounding area, or they would definitely be destroyed. When the storm had calmed, 18 Saint Kings appeared, all of them frowning deeply. They did not sense Ling Han's aura. It was as if he had never even existed. Chapter 1632, Refining Saint-Grade Alchemical Pill. If they had killed Ling Han with that one strike, a rain of blood would have occurred by now. The 18 Saint Kings were all confused. That had been a fatal attack from each of them, and even if Ling Han had dodged into a spatial god tool, his death would have been inevitable. Yet now, it was frighteningly quiet all around them. This was too inconceivable. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han was also surprised because these 18 Saint Kings were all completely unfamiliar to him. Just how many Saint Kings were there in the world? Ling Han was sure that these Saint Kings had all changed their appearances, and their motive was to leave a way of retreat for them. What if they were not able to kill Ling Han? Then it would be impossible for Ling Han to know who they were. They would still be able to ride on Ling Han's ship, and enter into the celestial realm. Humph. He humphed coldly internally. Was there anything so good in this world? Appearances could be changed, but auras were difficult to change. Every cultivator had their unique aura. Usually, they could control it from seeping out, but once they attacked, especially when it was done with their full strength, it would definitely be impossible to conceal any longer. Ling Han had already memorized the auras of these Saint Kings. The next time they met, he only had to force them to attack, and he would be able to distinguish if they were among the attackers today. Just you wait. There was no need for too long a period of time. Like the Empress, after he had completely stabilized his cultivation level, his strength at the peak stage of Small Saint, he would be able to match the peak stage of the Great Saint tier. Then, after he advanced into the Medium Saint tier, he would no longer have to be wary even if he was facing a Saint King. Even if he could not match a peak stage Saint King, with the strength of his physique, there was absolutely no need for him to fear. All the Saint Kings were not satisfied with just leaving, and sat cross-legged in the surrounding empty space. It was impossible for a man to suddenly disappear. Ling Han had to have hidden himself with some unknown means. It was very possible that it was a celestial tool. They refused to believe that he would be able to stay in it forever. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, a year had passed. It was as if Ling Han and his group had completely vanished from this world. The Open Clouds King was also one of the 18 Saint Kings that had ambushed Ling Han. He did not sense the reappearance of the link of karma all this while, and was sure that Ling Han was definitely still in this realm. To Saint Kings, even a wait for a tens of thousands of years was nothing. They were determined to stand by and wait until Ling Han appeared once more. However, as time passed, the Saint Kings that had stayed behind on Wood Figure Planet naturally realized that Ling Han had not appeared on Cloud Apex Planet, and they all set off in search of him. Let's go. The 18 Saint Kings' expressions changed, and they swiftly left. If all the Saint Kings were here, then removing those Saint Kings that had come from the equation, those that remained were only those who had ambushed Ling Han. It would be too easy to distinguish them. At present, they didn't even have any idea where Ling Han was, so they were naturally unwilling to expose their true identities. Immediately, they turned and left. Not too many days later, they appeared with their original appearances, and pretended to have just found out something had happened, passing themselves off as part of the others who had genuinely no part in the ambush. Finally, all the saints left. This galaxy returned once more to a dark, cold, and solitary place. Within the Black Tower, Small Tower brought a piece of good news to Ling Han. The reincarnation tree had sprouted again, and could be used once more. Experiencing rebirth after death, the reincarnation tree was also greatly improved. It could simultaneously accommodate as many as 100 people comprehending Tao, and 1 day of comprehension was equivalent to 100 years, which meant that the flow of time would be sped up by 30,000 times and more. Ling Han was overjoyed. Without the help of the reincarnation tree, his grasp of regulations in this 1 year had progressed pitifully slowly. He hurriedly began his comprehension of Tao beneath the tree, and the others did the same. They only knew how much the reincarnation tree had been of help to them after they had lost it. After a mere half-year's time, Ling Han had truly reached the peak of the Small Saint tier. This also meant that if he comprehended Tao in the outside world, he would need close to 20,000 years to do the same thing, so the value of the reincarnation tree was imaginable. After stabilizing his cultivation level, Ling Han did not rush to break through to the medium saint tier. His accumulation was not enough, so if he forcefully broke through, it would only result in death. And to possess enough accumulation, he would either have to settle for countless years, and accumulate slowly for the final burst, or depend on alchemical pills. Only then would he be able to avoid having his vitality and life force sucked dry when he increased his cultivation level and had inadequate accumulation. Ling Han naturally chose the second option. Firstly, the first option was too slow, and secondly, he was the alchemy emperor. Was he an idiot not to take alchemical pills now? However, everything of saint grade was difficult to grasp. Ling Han did not hurry to make his move. Instead, he made his preparation work so that he would first advance into saint tier in terms of alchemy. Good tools were prerequisite to the successful execution of a job. Another year later, Ling Han finally stopped his probing into the path of alchemy. He already had a preliminary grasp, and could attempt concocting saint-grade alchemical pills. However, to concoct saint pills, there was need to use saintly medicine as the main ingredients. There were not many such ingredients in Ling Han's possession. Previously, in the treasure exchange, he had only managed to trade for 3. If I'm lucky, I can refine 3 cauldrons worth of saint-grade alchemical pills, and even if all of them were a success, there would only be about 10. This is already enough. He and the Empress would each consume 5 pills, and that would be enough to satisfy the frightening demand for energy after they entered into medium saint tier. And once they became medium saints, they would no longer have to fear saint kings. They could completely go and rob the various lands of the great saints. Too bad, though the reincarnation tree was closer to celestial level, it would only be able to increase their comprehension. There was practically no effect on the increase of origin power. Otherwise, Ling Han would not be having such a headache. He began the concoction process cautiously. Because there were only 3 saintly medicines, there was definitely no error that could be allowed to happen. 3 months later, Ling Han had finished concocting the first cauldron of alchemical pills. They have succeeded, but their grade has not reached my expectations. Ling Han shook his head regretfully. However, succeeding upon his first time of concocting saint-grade alchemical pills, his ability in alchemy was definitely top in the present immortal realm. Though the hardship alchemy saint had also concocted saint pills before, he had sacrificed 10 saintly medicines in the process, and he could not guarantee that it would succeed every single time. Thus, usually no one would use saintly medicines to concoct alchemical pills. Instead, they would be consuming them directly. Again. With the experience from one successful attempt, Ling Han naturally was more confident and proficient. Half a year later, another 2 cauldrons of saint-grade alchemical pills were successfully concocted, and their grade improved with each subsequent cauldron. There is really not enough time, he mused ruefully. He presently had already advanced to the saint tier, and could inscribe saint-grade killing formations in his body. But previously, he had been focused on stabilizing his cultivation level of small saint tier, which was followed by his study of alchemy and concocting alchemical pills, and there had not been any time for him to focus on formations. Thankfully, he still had the reincarnation tree. Otherwise, he would definitely not have enough time to study formations in the next 100,000 years. I can set formations to one side first. When I have become a medium saint, I will boost my grasp of formations in one go. Both he and the Empress made their final preparations, then each took 5 saint-grade alchemical pills, and appeared in the galaxy. They separated to avoid being mistakenly pulled into each other's heavenly tribulation. Who knew what a doubled heavenly tribulation would be like, and there was definitely no one who wanted to find out. They released their aura, and thunderclouds suddenly arrived. The whole universe became very repressed. When they broke through to the small saint tier, what they experienced was equivalent to the tribulation for a great saint, and now that they were advancing into medium saint tier, wouldn't it have to be a tribulation for a saint king? Crack! 2 bolts of lightning struck towards Ling Han and the Empress, respectively, practically at the same time, and in this process, the 2 bolts of lightning all took human form. Wang, a frightening aura surged out. It was actually Saint King tier. Chapter 1633, Drinking the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid. The Empress directly ejected her 9 doppelgangers, receiving the attacks of the Heavenly Tribulation. She had always been aggressive and assertive, and now that there were no outsiders here, she naturally had no need to worry that her trump cards would be known to others. From the beginning, her battle prowess was on full throttle, and she was beating the lightning giant. So what if it was Saint King tier? In front of the present Empress, it was no longer in a lofty, superior position, but rather was an opponent that she could face, and even suppress. Ling Han, though, was not as relaxed as the Empress. He still had to allow his godly bones to be tempered, but the gap in cultivation level was too wide. He did not dare to shatter his own body like he had done in the past. Instead, he received the power of lightning directly into his body, and used a more moderate method to temper his godly bones. But if anyone had seen it, they would definitely exclaim loudly that he was a freak. He called that moderate? That was an attack from a Saint King tier, and you were actually using it to temper your body. Were you tired of living? This husband and wife were definitely freaks among freaks. One easily endured the heavenly tribulation, while the other treated the heavenly tribulation like a natural furnace to temper himself. Unfortunately, Ling Han did not dare to enter deeply into the tribulation clouds to get more heavenly tribulation fluid this time round. His present battle prowess was only capable of matching the early stage of Saint King tier, but if he entered into the depths of the tribulation clouds, not only would there be peak stage Saint Kings, their number was frighteningly high too. His present physique still could not hold up to the barrage from so many Saint Kings. Perhaps he would be able to make an attempt when he next broke through to the Saint King tier. After the heavenly tribulation, Ling Han and the Empress exchanged a smile. At present, they were confident enough to face all their strong enemies in the ancient realm. It was the ancient realm, not just the immortal realm. That was because they had simultaneously cultivated the regulations of the 2 realms, which were perfectly merged. Whether it was the immortal realm or the netherworld, they could completely release their full battle prowess. Are we going to seek out those guys immediately for vengeance? The Empress asked. Ling Han considered for a moment, and then answered, no, let's try to merge the regulations of the 2 realms first. If the ancient realm could really be merged in our hands, that would be a great merit, and the benefits we obtain would be indescribably generous. In the past, he had come through opening the sky, and had thus been rewarded by the heaven and earth. His power had been a whole 3 stars stronger than his peers in the shattering void tier, and there were too many small worlds. You could open the sky, and so could I, but for the ancient realm? There was only one. Since opening the sky of a small world was already so amazing, then if they merged the 2 realms, how nature-defying would their merit be? The Empress nodded. They were both people who were determined to become celestial kings, so it was naturally better for their battle prowess among their peers to be stronger. The 2 of them entered into the Black Tower. The Empress stabilized her cultivation level, while Ling Han still had to set out again on his path of formations in addition to stabilizing his cultivation level. Ling Han had already accumulated enough on the path of formations. When he had unraveled tens of thousands of formations in a mystery realm, his foundations had also become incredibly deep and resounding, and added with his frequently discussing formations with the Tranquil Heart Saint, his knowledge of formations was actually not inferior to the Tranquil Heart Saint's any longer, aside from saint-level formations. He focused on studying. Time passed under the reincarnation tree. In the outside world, 3 years had passed, and underneath the reincarnation tree, 100,000 had passed. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open. He had advanced into the saint tier in formations. However, the Tranquil Heart Saint was only a small saint. Thus, his knowledge of formations also stopped at the level of small saint tier. The experience related to formations that he had taught to Ling Han was also only limited to the small saint tier. To Ling Han, was there any more meaning to small saint tier formations? No. However, he still had celestial level formations. With his present godly bones, it was naturally impossible for them to bear the might of celestial level formations. Furthermore, even if they could, he would not be able to activate a celestial level formation either, as he didn't have the ability at all. However, celestial level formations could be used as reference, so wouldn't it work with a slightly weaker version? He went into another long period of seclusion. A year had passed, and he had disassembled a portion of a celestial level formation. Its strength was comparable to the peak stage Great Saint tier. Ling Han inscribed the formation patterns on his godly bones with the 9 heavens flame as his blade. If he did not depend on the might of formations, his battle prowess was comparable to the early stage of Great Saint tier, and if he activated the formations, then he would not have to fear even peak stage Saint Kings. He broke into a smile. These 4 years had been worthwhile. After entering into the Saint tier, there was practically no alchemical pill in this world that could allow him to swiftly boost his cultivation level. If it was not for the fact that he had cultivated to the pinnacle at the Eternal River tier, and entered into the peak stage of the low extreme upon breaking through to the Genesis tier, he would probably have been unable to fully cultivate to even the early stage of the small saint tier now. Just take a look at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. She was still advancing with much difficulty in the early stage of the small saint tier, and completely did not have the sharp progress that she had once had. Furthermore, this was also taking into account that she had the inheritance from the 3 Phoenix Kings, and her cultivation rate was much faster than any other saints. By now, if he wanted their cultivation rates to speed up, there was only saintly medicine left, but how many saintly medicines were there in the entire ancient realm? Ling Han was now stuck in a dilemma. On one hand, he wanted to cultivate to the Saint King tier in the ancient realm. Then, he would be able to enter into the depths of the thunderclouds another time, and collect the heavenly tribulation fluid. On the other hand, he also wanted to enter quickly into the celestial realm. With how bountiful the resources of the celestial realm were, there would definitely be countless saintly medicine, and even celestial medicine was possible. Ling Han pondered deeply for a while, and made his decision. When I undergo the great saint tribulation, I will enter into the depths of the tribulation clouds to collect heavenly tribulation fluid again. I'm sure that with my strength then, there should still be some hope. If it is possible, I will see who would be undergoing a heavenly tribulation, and take the initiative to draw the might of the heavenly tribulation to me so I can harvest to my heart's content. This is not a bad idea. In any case, I will have to reach the great saint tier to be able to open the doors to the celestial realm. Let's see exactly what benefits the heavenly tribulation fluid can bring first. Ling Han drew out the heavenly tribulation fluid, and took a small sip. Suddenly, his whole body was blazing with lightning, and it was as if his entire body would be turned into lightning. He could clearly feel that there was lightning raging in his body. His godly bones couldn't hold up at all, and were beginning to crumble. Gasp! It was too violent. It should be known that he presently was a medium saint, and the strength of his godly bones had soared up to the strength of level 20 godly metal. Even if it was not as strong as that, it would not be too far off either, yet they were actually beginning to collapse under the force of the lightning. As expected, if I were to barge into the depths of the thunderclouds at this moment, that would only be an act to court death, Ling Han mumbled in a trembling voice. Small Tower was also right in not allowing me to share the heavenly tribulation fluid with others. For those below celestial level, I should be the only one that can bear such a barrage. Even the Empress would not be able to. Though she could distribute any attack that she sustained, drinking the heavenly tribulation fluid meant that lightning would be running berserk directly in one's body. Her 9 doppelgangers would have no use at all. Ling Han gritted his teeth, and channeled the indestructible heaven scroll with all his might. Now, he was already a medium saint, and after channeling the indestructible heaven scroll, what level of strength would his physique be capable of reaching? His godly bones were slowly beginning to heal. This violent power of lightning actually did not manage to cause the slightest damage to him. However, the time that this kind of condition could be maintained was limited. After 30 minutes, Ling Han released a sharp cry. Pa, 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 pa. The godly bones that he had just healed shattered once again. His skin split, and blood sprayed out madly. Damn, he had clearly only taken a small sip, but why was its might so powerful? Damn, stupid small tower, why hadn't it said clearly from the beginning? This was not just not a small sip, he had to take a small sip of a small sip. You tsunder a tower, if I don't throw you into the toilet in future, I will take your surname. Ling Han shouted out in pain. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.